the royal decree echoes across the land, seeking the destined princess whose foot perfectly fits the mysterious glass slipper. Gazing quietly at the commotion, Adelina knows deep down that she isn't the destined princess. Remembering the grand ball held to choose the prince's bride, Adelina recalls how her mother absolutely insisted she attend. Though the prince initially showed no enthusiasm, everything changed when he met a beautiful girl and suddenly fell in love. But as the clock struck midnight, the mysterious girl left behind a single glass slipper and vanished without a trace. Staring lovingly into each other's eyes, the prince and the beautiful blonde girl shared a magical, unforgettable moment. Overjoyed, Prince Alexis of the Miracle Kingdom declares he has finally found his destined princess. Holding the delicate glass slipper, the prince reveals that the girl he was looking for is none other than a resident of this very house. To everyone's shock, the destined bride is revealed to be Adelina's own stepsister, Ella. Captivated by her translucent platinum blonde hair and clear sky-blue eyes, the prince insists they go to the castle and hold the wedding right away. Smiling brightly, Adelina thinks this is a happy ending, even if she might be a little biased as her stepsister. The joyous atmosphere shatters instantly as Ella screams out that she cannot be his bride. As the window violently shatters, Ella shocks the room by confessing she actually likes the wizard. Crashing through the remaining glass, a grinning wizard swoops in and announces he has come to get his honey. The wizard hovers confidently on his broomstick in the center of the chaotic room while the royal guards and the prince stand completely frozen. Ella leaps into the wizard's arms, ecstatic that he came for her as he promises to never leave her behind. Stunned by the sudden elopement, Adelina desperately reaches out and begs Ella to wait a moment. Ella kindly tells Adelina not to worry, thanking her for being the only one in the house who treated her kindly. A devastated Prince Alexis reaches out toward his escaping bride, desperately questioning what will happen to the castle and the wedding. Refusing to back down, Ella apologizes for her selfishness but insists she cannot marry the prince because she truly likes the wizard. Bidding everyone a final goodbye, Ella flies off into the sky as the prince watches his entire world crumble. The two lovers disappear into the clouds to live happily ever after, leaving Adelina frantically waving her hands to stop them. Panicking that this impossible scenario is actually happening, Adelina watches the guards scramble to go after the runaway couple. An aide approaches the stunned prince, asking what they should do now that his destined partner has eloped. The tension skyrockets as the prince realizes a carrier pigeon has already been sent to the castle, announcing he found his destined princess. Adelina watches nervously, knowing that if anyone finds out the beautiful prince's destined princess ran away, it will be a disaster. Trembling with humiliation, the prince realizes the whole kingdom will laugh at them, leaving Adelina terrified of what he will do next. The prince suddenly locks his steely gaze onto Adelina, darkly asking his aide if the unfortunate one is the sister. Realizing the prince intends to take anyone from the house to save face, Adelina introduces herself as a deep sense of dread washes over her. Cornering the sweating and terrified Adelina, the prince coldly announces to the room that he came to the Viscount's house and found his destined princess. With a terrifying glare, the prince forces Adelina to quietly become his bride, threatening to punish her whole family if she dares to refuse. Terrified of being killed if she resists, the ordinary stepsister takes the runaway Cinderella's place and marries the prince. Arriving swiftly at the royal palace, the prince instructs his staff to be ready to hold the ceremony immediately. Finding the wedding preparations already complete, Adelina sweats nervously, thinking the prince is acting far too fast. Walking through the grand halls, Adelina hears the palace staff whispering and questioning if she is truly His Majesty Alexis' destined princess. Standing stiffly under the judgmental gazes of the crowd, Adelina overhears them mocking her as a plain stand-in. The cheerful head maid interrupts the gossip, instructing Adelina to follow the maids and change into her wedding attire. Nervous about the sudden wardrobe change, Adelina worries if this will work since Ella's dress is a completely different size. The maids forcefully pull the tight dress onto Adelina, complaining that it won't go in because it was made exactly to the prince's strict orders. As the chaotic preparations continue, an angry Adelina realizes the prince estimated the excessively bold dress by eye, knowing it would be too tight even for the petite Ella. Adelina realizes they have already come too far to turn back. Only a few hours have passed since the prince first noticed her presence. Standing before the grand doors, the prince addresses her as Everina. Resigned to her fate, Adelina accepts that she cannot run away anymore. When she gently corrects him that her name is actually Adelina, the prince coldly snaps that he doesn't care. Trapped by his logic, Adelina silently fumes that he never gave her the option to refuse. The prince dismissively insists that since the glass slipper fit her perfectly, she is the one he fell for at the ball. A grand announcement heralds the entrance of the bride and His Highness Alexis. Adelina forces a polite smile, obediently following his command as the doors swing open. Walking down the aisle past cheering crowds, Adelina seethes over his utter rudeness. She notes the stark contrast between his dismissive attitude now and the polite facade he wore for Ella. Staring blankly ahead, Adelina silently congratulates Ella. She thinks her stepsister is incredibly lucky to have avoided getting involved with such an arrogant guy. Despite the prince's stunningly handsome appearance, Adelina feels a strange sense of relief. Being with someone who boldly gets her name wrong makes the absurd situation slightly easier to bear. Standing before the towering stained glass, the prince swears his true heart in sickness and in health. Adelina bitterly accepts her fate with a firm, "I do," glad she won't suffer from unrequited love. The priest cheerfully commands them to seal their vows with a kiss. Panic instantly flashes across Adelina's trembling face as the prince turns toward her. Noticing his deeply reluctant expression, Adelina realizes he feels just as forced into this as she does. The prince glares down at her, silently broadcasting that he is doing this entirely against his will. With a swift, dramatic motion, the prince grabs the edge of her veil. He flings the fabric back, fully exposing Adelina's nervous face to the cathedral gathering. Squeezing her eyes shut, Adelina desperately prays he won't aim for her lips since the vows kiss can technically go anywhere. She braces herself for the inevitable impact as he steps closer. Shattering her hopes, the handsome prince leans in and captures her lips in a sudden, undeniable kiss. Reeling from the shock, Adelina mentally bids farewell to her first kiss. The moment was so incredibly sudden that it left her with almost no real impression of the act itself. Following the exhaustive wedding ceremony, the newlywed couple finally arrives at their wedding night. A heavy, awkward silence fills the lavish royal chambers. Sipping tea in stifling silence, Adelina nervously offers to pour His Highness another cup. They simultaneously utter an awkward sound, highlighting the thick tension between them. Studying his exhausted face, Adelina concludes that the prince married her in a fit of despair after Ella's rejection. She senses that the crushing weight of regret is finally catching up with him. Sitting near the extravagant marital bed, Adelina wishes he had regained his composure before tying the knot. The harsh reality of being officially married hangs heavily in the air. Breaking the suffocating silence, the prince states they need to properly decide their next steps. He sets his teacup down, preparing to lay out the cold facts of their arrangement. The prince bluntly warns her that marrying her does not mean he plans to love her. Unfazed, Adelina politely interrupts to assure him she expects absolutely no love from him. Calling out his narcissism, Adelina reminds him she was forcefully dragged here as a stand-in for Ella. She explicitly defines their sudden marriage as a complete accident. Smiling pleasantly, Adelina labels the entire ordeal as a mere incident. The prince flinches, quietly agreeing with a defeated sigh. Adelina cheerfully suggests he treat her as a mistress, concubine, or whatever suits him, giving him permission to forget her entirely. The prince stares in stunned disbelief at her total lack of expectations. She smoothly offers him a divorce once the scandal dies down, provided he supplies basic food, clothing, and shelter. In exchange, she promises to behave quietly and stay completely out of his way. Dropping to her hands and knees in a deep bow, Adelina formally apologizes from the bottom of her heart. She takes full blame for the massive trouble her incompetent stepsister caused the crown. Driven purely by self-preservation, she plays the dutiful apologizing sister. Internally, she blames the prince for moving too fast and making the situation irreversible, though she admits Ella shares responsibility. Bowed on the floor, Adelina suddenly senses a heavy, dangerous shift in the atmosphere. She breaks into a cold sweat, realizing something is terribly wrong. The prince rises from his chair, a dark shadow obscuring his eyes. Adelina panics, terrified that his volatile anger is flaring up once more. Trembling on the carpet, she hysterically wonders if he is going to execute her on the spot. Wild fears of an immediate family execution race through her mind. Instead of drawing a blade, the prince gently orders her to lift her head. Looking down at her, he softly admits that none of this is her fault and questions why she is apologizing. Relieved that immediate punishment is off the table, Adelina exhales a quiet, "Thank goodness." She maintains that the apology is necessary since the entire incident began with her stepsister. Calculating her survival, Adelina hopes this dramatic prostration serves as a crucial record of her apology. If he ever considers beheading her in the future, this memory might just save her life. Sighing in exhaustion, the prince finally declares they have talked enough. He generously offers her the lavish marital bed, stating he will sleep on the couch. Though she knows she should ideally offer him the bed, Adelina embraces the fact that they are sleeping separately. Deciding to take him at his word, she happily claims the comfortable mattress. Adelina cozies up under the thick, warm covers of the royal bed. Across the dark room, the prince lies awake on his makeshift bed, eyes open in the quiet night. Peeking over her soft blankets, Adelina quietly wishes His Highness a good night. She settles into the pillows, ready to escape the exhausting day. Before she can fully drift off, the prince softly replies with a quiet acknowledgement out of sheer habit. Adelina blinks, surprised by the unexpected vocal response. Staring at the ceiling, Adelina realizes she genuinely didn't expect him to reply. The tiny interaction leaves a strange warmth in the silent room. Despite being completely exhausted, Adelina tosses and turns, admitting she gives up on resting. Lying wide awake, she concludes that she won't be able to sleep tonight at all. Commanding her to shut up and marry him, the prince suddenly makes Cinderella's stepsister Adelina his bride. Adelina grasps her reality resembles a nightmare rather than a fairy tale as the intimidating prince forces her compliance. Just like that, Adelina's unexpected life as a royal bride officially begins today. Smiling maids quickly inform Lady Adelina that by order of His Highness Alexis, she must move to a detached palace. Adelina stares in wide-eyed shock at the sudden news of a detached palace. Leaving behind the great royal palace, Adelina rides a carriage far away until she reaches a small, white mansion. Standing before the quiet estate, Adelina accepts this humble mansion will be her new residence from today onward. She assumes His Highness Alexis already regretted marrying her on their wedding night and simply exiled her. Banished to a distant palace so he wouldn't face her, Adelina discovers her schedule as a mere decorative bride remains completely empty. Clasping her hands in sheer joy, Adelina thanks God for granting her the ultimate royal Engi life. Strolling through the peaceful gardens, she resolves to thoroughly enjoy this carefree existence until her inevitable divorce. Startled maids inform Lady Adelina that the vast, untouched royal property surrounding them belongs entirely to her. Trembling with excitement, Adelina realizes her lifelong dream of a slow country life might actually materialize. Recalling her past diligence in tending a small garden, she remembers devouring books on farming to fulfill her dream of peaceful country living. Adelina remembers the prince's secretary allocating her a generous free budget as the newly appointed crown princess. Recognizing she lacks any occasion to show off expensive dresses or jewels, she cunningly decides to repurpose the budget. Laborers immediately flood the grounds, vigorously swinging pickaxes to transform the overgrown royal estate. Chief Secretary Conrad arrives on the scene, staring in utter disbelief at the massive construction project. Sweating nervously, Conrad questions the meaning of developing Lady Adelina's land without formal permission. Shocked beyond belief, Conrad watches the workers eagerly plow fields at Lady Adelina's personal request. Assessing the cleared thicket, Adelina ponders her next move while the workers wait for her brilliant instructions. Pointing with commanding authority, Adelina designates sunny areas for crops, the lake for a fishing pond, and the thick grass for a thriving animal pasture. Finding the situation incredibly interesting, Conrad orders the maids to report the crown princess's daily activities before heading back to the castle. A smiling maid announces the arrival of the requested livestock, revealing a flock of highly recommended beginner sheep. Adelina beams with pride, declaring her magnificent ranch officially complete. A flustered merchant apologizes profusely as Adelina spots a peculiar, fluffy creature mixed in with the herd. Staring into its adorable round eyes, Adelina identifies a strange alpaca accidentally mixed into her delivery. Captivated by the cute animal, Adelina immediately insists on purchasing the alpaca as well. The merchant cries tears of joy at the kind princess's generosity as they eagerly arrange the payment. While the maids awkwardly question the strange sheep, the merchant celebrates finally selling the mysterious creature. Flexing her book knowledge, Adelina excitedly explains that rare alpacas can be sheared and utilized to carry heavy loads. Thrilled by her lucky find, she promises to brush the fluffy creature's fur later. Unable to resist its charm, The curious maids timidly ask if they can pet the adorable alpaca too. Smiling warmly, Adelina gladly grants them permission, completely understanding their overwhelming desire to touch the fluff. With the ranch lively with animals and the fishing pond nearly finished, Adelina's grand vision rapidly materializes. Tending to her new plants, Adelina informs the curious maids that she is actively cultivating a vegetable garden. Utilizing her book knowledge of advancing foreign food cultures, she reveals her plan to grow exotic vegetable seedlings to cook foreign dishes. Eager to thank everyone for working the land, Adelina suggests cooking a foreign feast and turning it into a massive celebratory event. The highly anticipated Lady Adelina Big Fishing Tournament kicks off, featuring a grand prize of her own handmade wool mascot. Enjoying the pleasant day, Lady Adelina herself cheerfully participates in the vibrant tournament alongside her loyal maids and fluffy alpaca. The scene opens on an intense competition, begging the question of who will emerge victorious. Adelina casually lowers her line, simply happy to try fishing for the first time, when her float suddenly plunges under the water. A massive tug violently yanks Adelina forward, sending her maids into a frantic panic as a fluffy alpaca watches the chaos unfold. Onlookers erupt in excitement as Adelina wrestles with a massive bite on her heavily strained fishing line. Three panicked maids desperately grab Adelina's waist to anchor her as she strains against the incredibly heavy catch. With a triumphant shout, Adelina successfully yanks a monstrous fish out of the splashing water. The crowd cheers wildly, declaring Lady Adelina the undisputed champion with her gargantuan catch. Adelina beams with pride as she is awarded the grand winner's prize for her spectacular fishing skills. Gazing out at the busy estate workers, Adelina silently wonders how her runaway stepsister Ella is doing. Though she initially feared her sudden marriage to the prince, Adelina cheerfully realizes her new life is entirely peaceful. Surrounded by nature and friendly maids, Adelina rejoices at finally obtaining the quiet, idyllic life she always dreamed of. Despite her current happiness, she solemnly acknowledges that this serene existence will vanish once the prince inevitably divorces her. Plotting her future, Adelina eagerly schemes to squeeze enough compensation from the divorce to secure a quiet countryside estate. Eyes burning with determination, Adelina resolves to play the perfect hostess if the prince ever visits to maximize her future payout. Meanwhile, back at the towering royal palace, a sudden sneeze interrupts a brooding Prince Alexis. His loyal aide immediately turns, politely asking if His Highness has caught a cold. Alexis rubs his temple, muttering that someone like Adriana might just be gossiping about him. The aide swiftly reprimands the prince for boldly getting his own wife's name wrong, leaving Alexis completely bewildered. The aide sternly points out the prince's neglectful banishment of Lady Adelina, prompting a deep sigh of regret from Alexis over the hasty marriage. Frustrated, Alexis aggressively defends himself, citing the chaotic circumstances that forced him to take her as his bride. Glaring intensely, the prince dramatically recalls the shocking words his new wife uttered on their wedding night. Misinterpreting her relief, Alexis guiltily imagines a heartbroken Adelina weeping in isolation over a lost lover. The aide suppresses a laugh and hands over the Daily Maid reports, urging the endlessly worrying prince to actually read them. Pressing the issue, the aide reminds the prince that remaining completely ignorant of his wife's situation will only spark nasty rumors. Defeated by the logic of maintaining royal appearances, Alexis reluctantly accepts the thick stack of reports. Alexis scans the documents, his rigid image of Adelina instantly shattering as he reads about her wild farming and fishing exploits. His imagined vision of a tragic, weeping bride is completely obliterated by the reality of her rowdy fishing tournament. Stunned, Alexis asks his smiling aide if this chaotic report truly describes his supposedly delicate wife. Gazing out the window, the prince admits he wrongfully assumed Adelina was a fragile, sheltered noblewoman just like her sister. A newfound curiosity flickers in his eyes as he realizes he completely misjudged the girl he forced into marriage. Discarding his childhood fantasies of a destined princess, Alexis firmly declares he will visit the detached palace tomorrow. Walking down the grand halls, the prince feels relieved by her happiness but undeniably anxious about the bizarre contents of the reports. Night falls over the grand estate as the prince contemplates his upcoming reunion. Alexis nervously admits that her absolute lack of distress over his absence is seriously bruising his royal ego. Blissfully unaware of the impending royal visit, Adelina joyfully rides her fluffy alpaca toward her home. Smothered in a bright, happy aura, Adelina celebrates her secret, carefree slow life as a forgotten decorative princess. A frantic maid shatters her peace, screaming that Prince Alexis has unexpectedly arrived. Panicking over her dirty farm clothes, Adelina scrambles to find a back entrance to properly greet her estranged husband. Before she can escape, the captivatingly handsome Prince Alexis steps directly into her path. Mortified to be caught in peasant clothes atop an alpaca, Adelina freezes as the prince dryly observes how much fun she is having. Introducing her new fluffy alpaca, Adelina excitedly invites Prince Alexis to pet it, though he coldly declines the offer. Pivoting through the awkwardness, Adelina kindly invites the prince to join her for tea inside the quiet villa. Relaxing in the sitting room, Alexis explains he came to check on her well-being, though he notes she seems completely untroubled. Panicking inwardly over her farm clothes, Adelina nervously eyes the detailed activity report clutched securely in the prince's hand. Alexis comments on her surprising enthusiasm, noting she personally tills the soil and even plans to build a large orchard. Shocked by his incredibly accurate knowledge, Adelina nervously asks how he knows about the casual plans she only discussed with the maids. Holding up the thick document, Alexis reveals her comprehensive daily activity report, causing Adelina's heart to drop into her stomach. Trembling with dread, Adelina realizes every single one of her unroyal, carefree actions has been completely exposed to the crown. Scanning the document, she finds it details absolutely everything, from her agricultural projects to the massive fishing tournament. Certain she has horribly disgraced the royal family, a terrified Adelina deeply bows her head and desperately apologizes. Adelina heavily laments her unbefitting behavior as a consort, but a genuinely confused Alexis simply asks why she is apologizing. Expecting to be beheaded for making the royals a laughingstock, Adelina is completely stunned when the prince gently commands her to raise her head. With a soft, amused smile, Prince Alexis admits he actually found her unusual agricultural activities to be incredibly interesting. Alexis passionately explains that farming is a vital foundation for the country and should never be looked down upon by the nobility. Revealing his own future plans for a large-scale farm, he actively encourages Adelina to continue practicing and identifying agricultural challenges. Adelina stares at him in awe, realizing she foolishly misjudged him as a naive prince who simply proposed to Ella on a whim. Seeing his true dedication to the kingdom, Adelina hopefully asks if she can just continue her slow, country life. Beaming with genuine joy, Adelina brightly thanks His Highness, her radiant smile clearly leaving a lasting impression on him. Leaving the peaceful detached palace, a highly satisfied Alexis promises to come visit her again. Lounging comfortably beside her alpaca, Adelina regrets not offering the prince proper hospitality during his incredibly sudden visit. Determined to entertain him properly next time, she is suddenly startled by her maids frantically bursting into the room. The maids joyfully announce that Prince Alexis will be returning tomorrow, sending Adelina into an immediate, wide-eyed panic. Confused by the maids' intense energy, Adelina questions what they are hurrying for as they firmly drag her away. The highly motivated maids unleash a fierce barrage of face packs, hair treatments, and massages to perfectly prepare her for the royal visit. Trapped in the intense beauty regimen, Adelina inwardly doubts the stoic prince even cares about her physical appearance. Escaping to the safety of the kitchen, Adelina takes matters into her own hands and bakes a special treat in the oven. The frantic maids finally track her down in the kitchen, strictly scolding her as they rush to dress her before the prince arrives. Prince Alexis arrives with his royal guard, asking for the princess just as Adelina steps into the room in a stunning, elegant dress. Dressed to absolute perfection, Adelina stands quietly before Prince Alexis, anxiously waiting for his reaction to her refined appearance. Staring blankly at her beautiful dress, Alexis simply utters a flat acknowledgement, completely deflating her high expectations. Disappointed by his incredibly subtle reaction, Adelina sighs internally, firmly confirming her suspicion that he doesn't care about her looks. Shifting focus, Alexis commands a knight named Dunforth to step forward, officially presenting the guard to Adelina. The dashing knight bows with perfect grace, formally introducing himself to Her Highness. Flustered by the knight's strikingly handsome appearance, Adelina stammers a thank you, prompting a slightly annoyed Alexis to dismiss her gratitude. Adelina humbly insists that such a splendid knight is far too good for her, noting the detached palace is already peaceful and well guarded. Glaring intensely, Alexis fiercely reminds her that she is his consort and he absolutely refuses to wait until it's too late to protect her. Seeking her understanding, the serious prince suddenly calls her Magdalena, instantly causing a massive wave of confusion. A heavy, awkward silence descends over the room as the guards, the knight, and Adelina all completely freeze at the wrong name. Realizing the prince confidently called her by a stranger's name, Adelina begins sweating profusely as the entire room silently panics. Desperate to save the prince from crippling embarrassment, Adelina loudly changes the subject and deeply thanks him for prioritizing her safety. The scene opens with an announcement that the appointment ceremony will now be performed. A handsome knight kneels before Adelina, proudly declaring that serving a noble and beautiful lady like her is a knight's honor. Looking up with a charming smile, the knight humbly requests her permission to allow him to attend to her. Adelina nervously grants her permission, prompting the knight to gently press a kiss to the back of her hand. A slight blush spreads across Adelina's cheeks as she processes the surprisingly romantic gesture. Prince Alexis glares darkly at the knight, aggressively demanding to know how long he intends to keep holding his wife's hand. Interrupting the tension, Adelina cheerfully announces that the cake is finished baking and invites everyone to have some. A beautifully decorated masterpiece of a cake is presented, with Adelina sincerely hoping it suits the prince's taste. Alexis stares in genuine awe at the dessert, marveling at the proper tribute she prepared for today. Adelina secretly schemes that staying in the prince's good graces will secure her plenty of alimony when he inevitably divorces her, having spent all morning sneaking behind the maids' backs to bake this tear-jerking masterpiece. Taking a bite, the prince notes the unusual taste and asks what kind of cake it is, to which Adelina brightly replies that it is a carrot cake. Alexis freezes in utter shock at the mention of carrots, leaving Adelina completely bewildered by his dramatic reaction. The terrified maids frantically apologize to the princess, revealing that they forgot to tell her His Highness absolutely hates carrots. Glaring furiously, the prince demands that she tell him that kind of crucial information beforehand. Convinced she is about to be executed, Adelina panics as the prince double-checks if the cake is truly made from carrots. Babbling in sheer terror, Adelina over-explains that it is an ultra-commoner recipe using garden-grown carrots meant for picky eaters. Squeezing her eyes shut, Adelina bids goodbye to her short life before Alexis suddenly cuts her off with an intrigued exclamation. Mentally preparing for death, Adelina wishes to be born into a wealthy family in her next life instead of a bankrupt noble one. To her absolute bewilderment, the prince casually extends his empty plate and asks for another slice. Alexis praises the unbelievable deliciousness of the carrots, genuinely complimenting her as a truly unique girl. Smiling warmly, the handsome prince affectionately calls her Carolina. Adelina stares blankly at the prince, completely unimpressed by his confident mistake. She bluntly corrects him, flatly stating that her name is not Carolina, but Adelina. As the prince departs, Adelina celebrates her successful operation, relieved that the carrot incident didn't ruin her plans. Alexis suddenly informs her that she is expected to attend the welcome party for a southern envoy next month. Adelina freezes in horror as she slowly processes the prince's horrifying command. Collapsing dramatically, Adelina cries that it is impossible, having no idea she had to play an actual royal role. The narrative flashes back to a time before the two met, with the prince riding smoothly in a carriage. Crown Prince Alexis listens to reports from his aides, acknowledging that the people at the inspection sites were delighted by his visit. Suddenly, Alexis orders the carriage to stop, startling his guard Knight Gordon and Chief Secretary Conrad as he announces he has a mission. Staring intensely into the forest, Alexis claims his mission is to find his destined princess, convinced he hears her beautiful singing voice. Conrad tells him to get real, dismissing Gordon's sarcastic theories about a princess taking refuge with dwarves or being confined in a hidden tower. Pinching the bridge of his nose, Conrad bluntly tells the fine Prince Alexis that he has one fatal flaw. Conrad yells at the prince to give up his childish delusion that a destined princess will magically appear before him like in a storybook. Refusing to abandon his childhood dream, an indignant Alexis boldly declares he is going to find his destined princess right now. Alexis storms off with Gordon in tow, leaving a thoroughly exasperated Conrad sighing over his handful of a prince. Conrad chases after His Highness, desperately trying to stop the prince from wandering off on his fairy tale quest. Shaking off his secretary, Alexis aggressively defends his right to believe in true love and destined romance. Alexis reveals that his worried parents decided to hold a grand ball to forcibly find him a bride because he refused to choose a marriage partner. Standing bored at the crowded ball, Alexis plots to slip away at the first chance, setting the stage for his fateful encounter. Recalling his painful past, Prince Alexis reflects on the miraculous moment he finally met his destined princess. Waltzing under the glittering lights, he was absolutely certain his grand romance would end happily once he found her. But utter despair crushed him when she suddenly panicked and eloped with another man. Desperate to protect his own royal image, Alexis ended up marrying her elder stepsister instead. Immediately after the marriage, he callously drove his new bride away into a detached palace. Tormented by heartbreak, he banished her because seeing her face constantly reminded him of Ella. However, he vividly remembers her quietly declaring that she would never ask for his love. Interrupting his gloomy brooding, a royal aide suggests His Majesty finally read the activity report on Lady Adelina. Shocked to read about her bizarre fishing exploits, Alexis firmly decides things cannot stay this way and agrees to read it. Determined to make things right, the prince boards his royal carriage to officially face her. For the very first time, Alexis visits the quiet detached palace where his neglected wife resides. A flustered maid asks the prince to wait, nervously revealing that Lady Adelina is currently out for her daily walk. Sensing the staff's sheer panic over his sudden arrival, Alexis wonders if his visit is truly that unwelcome. Bursting through the rose garden, Adelina suddenly appears radiantly dressed as a village girl while riding a fluffy alpaca. Amused by the ridiculous sight, Alexis remarks to his stunned wife that she is certainly doing something highly entertaining. Realizing why the maids panicked, Adelina apologizes for her appearance and cheerfully invites the prince to fluff her alpaca. Gently petting the fluffy creature, Alexis softly admits that this sort of peaceful life isn't bad either. Riding back in his carriage, he marvels at how truly devoted she is to farm work despite her elegant looks. He softly remembers her light green eyes radiating kindness and her hair resembling the gentle shade of milk tea. Flashing back to her charming smile, he realizes her calming presence possesses a unique and quiet beauty. Discussing her background with his aide, Alexis confirms Adelina was actually born to a family of noble birth. After the Baron passed away, her mother remarried, turning Adelina into the daughter of Viscount Arlen's family. While rumors claim the Viscount's family are extravagant spenders, the aide notes Adelina and her mother suffered differently. Realizing Adelina and Ella endured terrible hardships, Alexis learns the Viscount family was actually on the verge of ruin. Resolving not to neglect her any longer, Alexis vows to visit his wife again with proper advance notice. To ensure her safety, the prince decides to officially assign a personal knight from his royal guard to protect her. Believing this favor will protect her honor and keep her sought after even if they divorce, Alexis justifies his actions. Despite his logical excuses, his chest feels strangely restless as he actively questions his own true motives. A sharp pang of jealousy hits him as he recalls someone mentioning she and her knight looked well together. Back at the Grand Royal Palace, the sun shines brightly over the massive stone balconies. An aide interrupts his grueling official duties, suggesting the exhausted prince finally take a short break. Feeling much better lately, Alexis accepts a slice of proud cake meticulously made by the elite court pâtissier. Examining the perfectly refined taste and decoration, his mind strangely drifts away from the royal dessert. He suddenly remembers Adelina cheerfully presenting a handmade cake she baked specifically for his visit. The aide casually mentions that Danforth has been bragging non-stop about eating the princess's delicious handmade sweets. Hearing that Danforth constantly enjoys her cooking during breaks, the prince completely freezes. Staring in sheer disbelief, a furious Alexis drops his fork as the shocking information fully registers. He furiously realizes Danforth has been casually eating his wife's cooking while he was trapped doing paperwork. Trying to rationalize that Danforth is her personal knight, Alexis suddenly remembers the man's unusually long oath kiss. Slamming his hand onto the desk, the jealous prince completely loses his composure over his wife's blooming popularity. Declaring all his urgent work finished, Prince Alexis announces he is heading to his wife immediately. A frantic aide tries to send word to the detached palace, but Alexis sternly stops him, insisting the visit is too urgent for advance notice. Remembering how her dressed-up beauty left him speechless before, Alexis realizes that a messenger would ruin his chance to see her off guard. He admits to himself that he desperately wants to see her natural, unpolished self again, even if he doesn't fully understand why. A memory flashes of a flustered Adelina politely begging His Highness to warn them before his unexpected visits. Standing in her rustic kitchen, Adelina insists that prior notice would be a great help for her unprepared staff. Smiling softly, the prince agrees to be more careful next time as he happily steps inside her domain. Inside, Alexis is utterly bewildered to find his loyal knight aggressively kneading bread dough instead of performing royal duties. Adelina eagerly offers the prince her handmade pumpkin pudding, unknowingly lifting his spirits higher than he ever expected. Alexis stares at the dessert, marveling at the simple charm of Lady Adelina's homemade sweets. When an aide remarks that she will make a wonderful wife someday, a defensive Alexis sharply reminds him that she is already his wife. A panicked Adelina asks if he actually likes pumpkin, assuming he might share her stepsister Ella's childhood hatred of vegetables. Taking a smooth bite, Alexis calmly assures her that he has absolutely no problem eating anything other than carrots. Back in the present, Adelina sweats nervously over the impending welcome party, seriously doubting her ability to handle such a massive role. When she desperately suggests inviting someone else, Alexis aggressively counters by promising to hire her a strict royal tutor tomorrow. Gazing at his frantic bride, Alexis silently acknowledges that her dressed-up appearance is undeniably beautiful. Despite her formal elegance, he finds himself increasingly captivated by the memory of her raw, natural self. Noticing his intense stare, a confused Adelina asks if something is wrong, snapping him out of his daze. Alexis smoothly brushes off her concern, claiming he was merely thinking about how strangely peaceful the detached palace feels. Later that night, the prince lies wide awake in his lavish, quiet bedchamber at the main castle. Contemplating Adelina's unique charm, he mischievously wonders if he should show up unannounced again just to see her adorably troubled face. Clutching his chest in the dark, Alexis suddenly realizes a shocking truth about his lingering feelings for his runaway bride. To his utter relief, his heart no longer aches when he remembers Ella, proving his emotional wounds have completely healed. A deeply distressed Adelina stares blankly ahead, completely overwhelmed by her escalating royal duties. Her loyal maids watch in absolute awe as their mistress undergoes a rigorous, high-society transformation. The enthusiastic maids ruthlessly pile on flashy accessories, completely ignoring Adelina's desperate pleas that an ornamental wife doesn't need this. Adelina mentally curses the prince's sudden command forcing her to attend the southern delegation's massive welcome party. A flashback reveals the terrifying moment she was introduced to her ruthless new tutor, the Countess, marking the start of her grueling education. Sighing in heavy exhaustion, Adelina bitterly laments that the prince hasn't taken a convenient mistress to leave her in peace. Alexis firmly reminds his heavily styled wife that the party is a diplomatic battlefield where her dignity will be fiercely judged. Flashing a bright smile, the prince casually announces he will be joining her grueling etiquette lesson today. Balancing heavy books perfectly on her head, Adelina internally panics that she is utterly unfit to be the crown princess consort. Striding into the room in a grand gown with her natural hair, Adelina anxiously wonders if she finally looks the part. The strict countess loudly praises Lady Adelina's splendid performance, proudly declaring her worthy of His Highness's choice. Adelina humbly accepts the praise, secretly thanking her cruel mother's merciless childhood etiquette beatings for her current survival. The atmosphere shifts drastically as the countess demands a partner for Lady Adelina's next challenge. Pure terror grips Adelina as she faces the absolute bane of her existence, the noble's mandatory dancing lesson. While an aide urges the prince to take the lead, Adelina desperately prays for a highly skilled partner to carry her. Shattering expectations, Alexis suddenly commands Lord Danforth to step up and be her dancing partner instead. As the high noble gracefully accepts, a massively relieved Adelina figures his immense skill will easily cover up her inevitable dancing disasters. Calling her by the completely wrong name, Prince Alexis affectionately refers to Adelina as Nidarina. Reaching out with a charming smile, the prince asks if his own wife will refuse to take his hand for a dance. Watching the sudden romantic gesture, the gathered maids collectively squeal and panic in sheer excitement. Clasping her hands in delight, the etiquette tutor loudly praises how incredibly fitting the couple looks together. The tutor gushes over their performance, proudly declaring that they look exactly like two people fated to meet. Bothered by his constant name mistakes, Adelina realizes that choosing another man now would look incredibly strange to everyone. Reflecting on her chaotic situation, she suddenly recalls the very first time she witnessed the prince's true destiny. During the grand ball, she was merely a distant spectator watching the prince meet her stepsister Ella. Swaying gracefully across the floor, Ella and the prince looked so perfect that anyone would believe they were bound by fate. A skilled pianist filled the grand hall with a beautiful, enchanting melody for the destined lovers. Flocking around the handsome prince, the noble ladies desperately begged him for a souvenir of the unforgettable night. Sitting quietly by herself, Adelina accepted her role as a mere side character in their grand romance. Snapping back to reality, she painfully remembers that the one who should be dancing with the prince right now is Ella. Noticing her sudden distress, Alexis holds her hand tightly and gently asks what is wrong. Filled with a deep sense of inadequacy, Adelina solemnly tells herself that she is not the one he truly wants. Lost in her gloomy thoughts, Adelina accidentally twists her foot and violently trips over her own dress. Moving with lightning speed, the prince gracefully catches his falling wife before she hits the floor. A flustered Adelina quickly apologizes for her clumsiness, prompting Alexis to point out she has been completely absent-minded. Unable to hold back her insecurities, she cries out that she cannot replace Ella and does not suit this gorgeous dress. Fearing the harsh judgment of the nobles, she worries they will mock her as pearls before swine if she attends the party. Mistaking his soft chuckle for agreement, a devastated Adelina accuses the prince of laughing at her painful realization. Gazing intently into her eyes, Alexis sincerely insists that she is already beautiful enough without any flashy jewels. Blushing heavily, Adelina quickly looks away and accuses the charming prince of being incredibly skilled at flattery. Leaning in close, Alexis whispers that it isn't flattery because right now he sees absolutely no one else but her. Knowing she isn't a proper princess consort, Adelina resolves to at least fulfill her duty since they are already bound by fate. Steeling her resolve, she decides she must act in a way that makes her appear truly worthy as his chosen consort. Staring into his gentle eyes, Adelina finds herself completely captivated by the prince's unexpectedly warm gaze. The etiquette tutor interrupts the romantic moment, vaguely evaluating that Adelina won't make any grave blunders at the party. Instructing her not to let her guard down, the prince calls out to the tutor, completely butchering her name as well. Realizing he also forgets the tutor's name, Adelina smiles in sheer relief as the awkward tension instantly vanishes. Grateful for the tutor's ability to read the room, Adelina quickly excuses herself to attend her next grueling lesson. Clutching her cheeks in embarrassment, she begs the prince not to blame her if she ends up failing miserably. The highly anticipated day of the grand party finally arrives at the towering royal castle. The royal announcer loudly declares the official entrance of His Highness Prince Alexis and Princess Consort Adelina. Descending the grand staircase hand in hand, the royal couple completely stuns the gathered crowd into absolute silence. The whispering nobles immediately praise Adelina's pearl-themed accessories, marveling at how modest and elegant she looks. Misinterpreting the intense whispers, a panicked Adelina fears she made a terrible mistake by choosing such a simple dress. Trembling with anxiety, she nervously asks the prince if she looks odd, but he firmly assures her it is the exact opposite. Walking proudly by her side, Alexis reminds her that being constantly stared at is simply a part of their royal job. Accepting her new reality, Adelina realizes the handsome prince has been used to this overwhelming attention since birth. Adelina listens softly as someone acknowledges that her situation must have been incredibly difficult. Prince Alexis gazes down at his surprisingly resilient bride in a moment of quiet reflection. Flustered by his unexpected respect, Adelina stammers that no one has ever said such kind words to her before. The prestigious ambassador from the southern nation arrives to formally congratulate the royal couple on their marriage. Prince Alexis confidently extends his hand to introduce his newly wedded wife to the important diplomat. The southern ambassador bows politely, expressing his deep honor at meeting the crown princess consort for the first time. Maintaining a graceful composure, Adelina formally introduces herself to the visiting dignitary. The ambassador passionately discusses the recent discovery of an ancient, legendary ruin in the southern nation's dunes. To everyone's shock, Adelina eagerly asks if he means the phantom city founded by the legendary sorcerer who commanded spirits. Stunned by her niche historical knowledge, a bewildered Alexis watches the ambassador confirm her detailed rumors. Adelina happily shares a quirky theory about the sorcerer inventing shawarma, thoroughly impressing the foreign envoy. Alexis realizes his eccentric wife must have eagerly absorbed this obscure knowledge all on her own. Observing her modest dress, the prince reflects on her mysterious presence compared to the flashy young ladies of the court. Onlookers whisper in absolute awe as Lady Adelina effortlessly captivates the foreign ambassador during her public debut. Alexis stares in quiet wonder at the stand-in bride who has somehow completely stolen his attention. As she celebrates the diplomatic success, Alexis silently acknowledges that his unpolished wife shines with the dazzling brilliance of a raw diamond. A title card announces the handsome prince finally realizing the true worth of his ornamental wife. Chatting with her maids later, Adelina casually notes that the prince handled the diplomacy with great success. The maids eagerly gossip about how wildly popular Prince Alexis was with the foreign ladies at the grand party. Hearing about his popularity, Adelina cheerfully schemes to quietly collect her alimony once he inevitably chooses a proper lover. Dreaming of the future, she blissfully anticipates living a lazy, carefree life hidden away in a countryside estate. Her peaceful daydream is violently shattered when a towering stack of letters violently slams onto her table. Adelina panics in sheer terror as she realizes they are endless tea party invitations from high society nobles. An aide gently advises her to accept the top invitation from the formidable Duchess of Raglaz, a powerful shadow figure in social circles. Grabbing her head in despair, Adelina wails that surviving such a terrifying solo social event is utterly impossible. She heavily doubts her ability to maintain proper, elegant conversations that demanding nobles would actually enjoy. Lord Danforth steps in, gently noting that her unique personality might be seen as slightly eccentric compared to typical ladies. Staring deeply into her eyes, he smoothly declares that her natural, genuine smile is far more beautiful than any jewel. With an intense gaze, the charming noble softly urges her never to forget her own innate beauty. Blushing slightly, Adelina completely misinterprets his romantic advance as merely incredible high society flattery skills. Resigned to her fate, Adelina commands her aides to prioritize the invitations so she can at least attend the Duchess's daunting party. The Grand Raglaz ducal mansion looms impressively as the highly anticipated tea party finally begins. Inside, the strict Duchess scoffs at rumors of Prince Alexis's newly chosen wise consort, highly doubting the gossip. Opening her fan with a sharp snap, the Duchess firmly declares she will judge the girl's true qualities for herself. A tense atmosphere fills the room as the imposing Duchess coldly greets a highly nervous Princess Adelina. Scrutinizing the girl from behind her fan, the Duchess dismissively concludes that the prince's bride looks terribly plain. Seeking juicy gossip, the ladies prod Adelina about her nights, prompting her to innocently admit she sometimes sleeps beside him. The room erupts in scandalous shock as Adelina brightly describes brushing his hair and petting him until he relaxes. Horrified nobles gasp at her sheer shamelessness as Adelina complains that he throws tantrums when she tries to send him back to his room. While a clueless lady asks for the animal's name, the disgusted Duchess firmly concludes that Prince Alexis's choice of consort is a complete failure. Viewing the princess as a corrupting influence on His Highness, a noblewoman quietly declares the situation a national crisis. Sweeping into the room with absolute authority, Duchess Adeline Raglaz formally introduces herself to the astonished guests. Finding the chaotic situation quite interesting, the Duchess requests to hear the princess consort's stories. Peering sharply from behind her intricate fan, the Duchess pointedly asks Adelina how she usually spends her time. Sweating nervously, Adelina hesitates as the Duchess secretly plots to humiliate her for having no proper place in high society. Trying to recall something recent, Adelina earnestly explains that she harvested tomatoes from the mansion's garden. The noblewomen stare in stunned silence as the Duchess raises a sharp eyebrow at the sudden mention of red vegetables. Flexing her agricultural knowledge, Adelina enthusiastically explains that the best time to harvest tomatoes is when the fruit turns deep red and the calyx curls back. Adelina suddenly panics upon noticing the Duchess's stern glare, realizing she just blabbered way too much about farming. The rest of the elegant noblewomen freeze, staring at the princess in absolute shock. Frantic whispers erupt among the guests as a terrified Adelina stands frozen, wondering what she should do next. The heavy tension shatters when the ladies eagerly crowd around Adelina, desperately asking how she knows so much. Completely bypassing the imposing Duchess, the excited ladies barrage Adelina with questions and ask if they can grow tomatoes too. A devastated Adelina quietly apologizes for being an inadequate consort, feeling she just ruined all her recent progress with the prince. Fleeing the overwhelming gathering, she awkwardly promises to consider attending their next regular dinner meeting. Back at his desk, Prince Alexis worries if he should check on Adelina since a massive flood of invitations arrived after the welcome banquet. A sudden knock interrupts his thoughts as Duchess Raglaz unexpectedly arrives at his office without a scheduled appointment. Lowering her fan, the formidable Duchess formally greets the prince. Sweating nervously, Alexis desperately asks how Adelina fared, terrified that something terrible happened at the tea party. The Duchess smirks and remarks that he found quite an interesting lady, leaving the prince confused by her vague assessment. Expecting harsh condemnation, Alexis silently deduces that Adelina must have deeply offended the Duchess with her unrefined knowledge of crops. The prince realizes that angering Duchess Raglas could completely isolate his wife in high society circles. Resolving to protect her honor, he decides to forcefully cover for Adelina's unusual habit of actively visiting fields and pastures. Staring with fierce determination, Alexis proudly declares that the royal consort is a symbol of the nation who must understand the people's hardships. He passionately defends her unique perspective, praising Adelina for seeking to understand the struggles of the commoners firsthand. Willing to sink with her if high society tries to oust her, Alexis prepares to defend his wife with all his might. The Duchess's eyes soften as she expresses genuine honor at his words, noting how much he has grown. She bluntly admits her initial fear that the dreamy prince would foolishly choose an empty-headed woman based purely on looks. Smiling warmly, the Duchess confesses she has never met such a wise lady and sternly urges the prince to never let Adelina go. A shocked Alexis realizes the Duchess actually approved of Adelina, though she strictly warns him to comfort his wife since she left looking pale as a ghost. Realizing the cunning Duchess only came to test his true feelings, Alexis accepts her stern advice. Turning back with a serious gaze, the prince announces he is going to see Adelina immediately. Reflecting on his past cowardice, Alexis acknowledges the old him would have handled things cleverly without risking his own position. Determined footsteps carry him swiftly across the sprawling stone pathways of the rose garden. Alexis freezes in his tracks as he spots Adelina quietly crying alone under a beautiful floral archway. Tears stream down Adelina's face as she stands miserably among the blooming white roses. The prince watches her with a heartbroken expression, struck by the painful reality of her silent suffering. Standing still in the fragrant garden, he wonders if this sudden, deep ache in his chest means he has truly changed. His intense gaze softens as a gentle voice suddenly begs Adelina not to cry. A stunning twist unfolds as the handsome knight Dunforth steps close to the weeping princess, tenderly calling out to her. Watching the beautiful young lady wipe away her tears, the prince solemnly realizes that the one who comforts her should be him. Stepping through the blooming rose arches, Prince Alexis firmly concludes that he needs to be the one standing by her side. Adelina nervously apologizes for her disastrous social debut, completely unaware that the prince has already spoken with the formidable Duchess Raglas. To her absolute shock, Prince Alexis calmly reveals that the strict Duchess actually seemed to like her very much. Staring up in disbelief, Adelina asks if he is telling the truth, prompting the prince to ask why he would ever lie. Relief washes over Adelina as she admits she thought the other nobles were merely covering for the Duchess's silent hatred. Handing her a delicate rose, the prince softly urges her not to push herself or pretend to be someone she is not. Gently tucking the flower into her hair, Alexis declares that she is most charming when humming with her alpaca or baking covered in flour. A massive blush explodes across Adelina's face as she processes the prince's unexpectedly sweet and highly specific compliments. Flustered by the overwhelming praise, Adelina stammers as she struggles to formulate a proper response. Adelina brightly declares that this is the second time in her life receiving such compliments, noting that Lord Dunforth said something similar. The prince freezes in utter shock at the mention of a second time, while Adelina happily thanks the knight for his encouragement. Smiling warmly at Lord Dunforth, Adelina rejoices that she can now relax and refresh herself without any lingering worries. Eager to redo the tea party, Adelina cheerfully suggests using their harvested tomatoes to serve some fresh canapés. Watching from behind, Prince Alexis silently notes that he should be thrilled his wife has finally cheered up. A dark shadow crosses his face as he remembers he is her husband, right before Adelina happily invites him to join their gathering. Glaring silently at the handsome knight, Alexis feels unbearably frustrated that his own bride seems to favor Lord Dunforth over him. Adelina reflects on her survival, foolishly assuming that attending just one tea party would stop the nobles from inviting her again. To her absolute horror, the towering stacks of high society invitations magically multiply every single day she attends a gathering. A lavish tea spread sits ready as the prince boldly greets his wife with yet another completely incorrect name. The prince looks bewildered by her exhausted expression, asking why she looks so completely drained. Gossiping aides whisper that Lady Adelina has been attending endless tea parties, forcing her smile so much that her face physically aches. Adelina desperately begs them not to laugh, confessing that she accidentally charms the nobles by talking about making clothes for her pet alpaca. She recalls showing off a simple tomato seedling to a crowd of highly sheltered noblewomen who were absolutely mesmerized by the strange plant. Alexis chuckles at her bizarre success in high society, while a terrified Adelina wails that she doesn't understand why they keep inviting her. Sensing her deep distress, the prince smoothly offers to take her away to the royal family's summer retreat for a much-needed change of pace. Adelina looks up with wide, sparkling eyes as the prince's generous offer completely catches her off guard. Trembling with pure joy, Adelina asks if she can really tag along, to which Alexis firmly replies that she is his bride. Adelina nearly weeps with happiness, thrilled that this official week-long trip gives her the ultimate legitimate excuse to dodge the terrifying tea parties. Processing the timeline, Adelina slowly murmurs the duration of their upcoming getaway to the summer retreat. A sudden, horrifying realization strikes Adelina, completely wiping the excited smile right off her face. While Alexis proudly assumes he should personally show his bride around, a panicked Adelina screams about needing a caretaker for her sheep, fields, and beloved alpaca. Watching their chaotic dynamic, the royal aides smile warmly and note that His Highness and Lady Adelina seem to be hitting it off perfectly. A breathtaking view of towering mountains and lush greenery sets the stage for the royal couple's grand arrival. Stepping out of the carriage, the prince proudly welcomes her to the retreat while confidently butchering her name yet again by calling her Katerina. Adelina gazes out in pure awe, marveling at the crystal-clear rivers and majestic mountains surrounding the summer-detached palace. When the prince asks if she likes the scenery, Adelina passionately shouts her love for the great outdoors into the echoing valley. Flashing a blindingly beautiful smile, Adelina sincerely thanks His Highness for bringing her to such an amazing place. Alexis watches her affectionately, hoping she relaxes completely during their short stay at the pleasantly simple rural estate. Breathing in the crisp air, Adelina rejoices that the surprisingly cheerful prince is letting her roam free without any suffocating formal duties. Wondering if she should casually ask Katerina for a walk nearby, Adelina hesitates. She suddenly notices the prince staring at her as if he desperately wants to say something. A sudden realization hits Adelina as she gasps in wide-eyed panic. She wonders if this terrifying tension could possibly mean the worst. Completely oblivious to matters of the heart, Adelina's imagination runs wild with worst-case scenarios. She frantically assumes the prince has come to introduce his secret mistress. Rationalizing her wild theory, Adelina recalls that keeping a hidden mistress far from the royal capital is a common historical pattern. She convinces herself that this distant land is the perfect blind spot for his secret lover. As the prince awkwardly clears his throat to speak, Adelina braces herself for a devastating mistress introduction. Determined not to just stand around complacently, she prepares to make a sudden move. Completely ignoring the prince, Adelina loudly asks Lord Danforth to accompany her on a little walk around the area. The loyal knight immediately accepts her sudden invitation. Bidding the stunned prince farewell, Adelina boldly tells Alexis to go ahead and enjoy his time with his hidden mistress. She swiftly departs before he can even process her outrageous assumption. Staring in absolute disbelief, the prince's aide questions if Danforth really just snatched Lady Adelina away. A deeply irritated Alexis bitterly declares he will just quietly enjoy the great outdoors completely alone. Strolling peacefully alongside the handsome knight, Adelina takes a deep breath of fresh air. She stretches happily, marveling at how nice the beautiful outdoors feel. Adelina excitedly suggests a mushroom hunting trip for tomorrow so she can cook them in the kitchen. She gleefully praises Danforth as an elite knight who understands her desires perfectly. Smiling warmly at her enthusiasm, Danforth asks what delicious dish she plans to make with their harvested mushrooms. He smoothly guides her attention to the wonderful views stretching out before them. A breathtaking panorama of rugged mountains and sweeping valleys stretches endlessly before the two companions. The majestic landscape fully captures the serene beauty of the remote estate. Gazing out over the stunning horizon, a mesmerized Adelina whispers in pure awe. She genuinely admires the breathtaking beauty of the tranquil landscape. Deep in thought, Adelina secretly plots to claim this perfect detached palace as her settlement once they inevitably divorce. She dreams of living out a relaxing, slow life surrounded by this majestic nature. Gently breaking her reverie, Danforth firmly states that His Highness truly wanted to share this beautiful scenery with her. His sincere words instantly halt Adelina's runaway thoughts. Adelina stares back in quiet surprise at the knight's unexpected defense of the prince. Danforth's gentle yet serious expression reveals his genuine loyalty to their royal marriage. Refusing to abandon her wild theory, Adelina stubbornly insists the prince only came here to see his hidden mistress. She quickly dismisses the knight's romantic interpretation of the royal visit. Sensing her stubbornness, Danforth politely suggests they finally head back to the estate. Adelina warmly thanks him for his kind words and eagerly anticipates their mushroom hunt tomorrow. Adelina and Danforth happily spend their pleasant days cooking delicious feasts and enjoying the peaceful summer-detached palace. Their carefree countryside retreat flourishes with joy and wonderful food. The scene abruptly shifts back to the towering, imposing stone walls of the grand royal palace. The heavy burden of ruling the kingdom looms over the royal grounds. A deeply exhausted Prince Alexis glares silently, his sharp eyes revealing a brewing storm of intense frustration. The heavy weight of his neglected emotions finally begins to take a visible toll on him. Engrossed in a massive mountain of paperwork, the prince aggressively scribbles away at his grand desk. His royal aide nervously watches the terrifying speed of his furious workflow. Crushed by the massive workload, the exhausted aide loudly complains that this was supposed to be a relaxing summer retreat. He desperately whines about being trapped inside while Danforth enjoys fun walks with Her Highness. Snapping at the noisy complaints, a furious Alexis threatens to immediately demote the aide to Danforth's lowly squire. The terrified aide violently flinches at the prince's tyrannical outburst. Screaming that the prince is a cruel tyrant, the panicked aide violently throws open the heavy doors and sprints away. Alexis angrily shouts after his fleeing subordinate to get back to work. Pausing his frantic escape, the aide glances out the large window and spots the returning duo. He casually points out that Lord Danforth and Lady Adelina have arrived just in time. Staring down from the high window, the aide casually remarks that the knight and the princess are getting along incredibly well. A dark shadow crosses the prince's face as he bitterly mutters the wrong name again. Exasperated by the constant blunders, the aide directly scolds the prince for childishly getting his own wife's name wrong on purpose. He firmly reminds Alexis that her true name is Lady Adelina. Down in the sunlit courtyard, a radiant Adelina smiles brighter than she ever has before. Her genuine happiness shines clearly as she converses with the loyal knight. Watching them closely, the aide praises Danforth as an excellent knight who would undoubtedly protect the princess in any emergency. He notes with sheer honesty that the two truly make a wonderful pair. Catching the prince's intense glare, the aide boldly suggests that Lord Danforth might actually be the perfect man for the job. Alexis repeats the phrase with a dangerous, quiet edge to his voice. Dropping a massive bombshell, the aide cheerfully clarifies that Danforth would be perfect for Her Highness's next marriage. The image of the beautiful princess and the handsome knight perfectly frames his shocking suggestion. The prince completely freezes, his eyes widening in absolute shock at the aide's outrageous words. A stunned, breathless gasp escapes his lips as the horrible realization strikes him. Calmly twisting the knife, the aide reminds Alexis that he fully intends to divorce Lady Adelina eventually. He logically explains that once the formal separation happens, she will be completely free to remarry another partner. Gazing out the window, the aide highlights that Danforth already knows all the complicated marital circumstances. He confidently asserts that the noble knight would never treat the gentle princess poorly. Pushing his argument further, the aide reveals that Danforth is the wealthy heir to a marquis's house. He smoothly points out that marrying the knight would perfectly guarantee Adelina's prestigious position in high society. Delivering the final blow, the aide casually observes the knight's gentle behavior toward the princess. He astutely concludes that Lord Danforth himself wouldn't be opposed to a romantic union. A sudden, sharp pang of intense jealousy violently pierces the prince's chest. He clenches his hand over his heart, letting out a quiet gasp as the painful reality of losing her finally sets in. Continuing his merciless teasing, the aide once again butchers her name by calling her Delphina. He innocently repeats that the two of them certainly make an incredibly good pair. Turning serious, the perceptive aide issues a firm warning to the struggling prince. He cautions Alexis that if he remains stubbornly bound to his past, he will foolishly overlook the precious love standing right in front of him. A narrator reflects that the elusive bluebird of happiness is often discovered surprisingly close to home. Gazing with a solemn expression, Adelina quietly admits that she already knows the harsh truth. The prince finally realizes that his lingering thoughts of Ella have been completely eclipsed by his growing obsession with Adelina, explaining his fierce jealousy toward Lord Danforth. He solemnly acknowledges that these deep, undeniable feelings have been rooted inside his heart for quite some time. Staring out at the gardens, Alexis confesses he desperately wants to protect her smile without confining her to a suffocating royal cage. His loyal aide brutally reminds him that his disastrous first impression means he must fight tooth and nail to genuinely win her heart. A dark flashback reveals the crushing moment Alexis coldly told his new bride he had no intention of ever loving her. Racked with agonizing regret, the prince desperately wishes he could turn back time and punch his foolish past self. Believing his chances are utterly ruined, a defeated Alexis tragically wonders if he should just bury his newfound feelings forever. The aide firmly encourages the gloomy prince to confess his true heart before their final night at the summer retreat comes to an end. Believing she would be absolutely delighted, the prince softly murmurs the wrong name once again. The narrative gracefully shifts focus to a beautifully braided Adelina as a fateful moment rapidly approaches. Alexis gazes at her longingly, desperately wishing she would direct the radiant smiles she gives Danforth toward him instead. On their final day at the villa, an oblivious Adelina happily contemplates how to cook her massive mushroom harvest. Stepping forward with serious determination, the prince awkwardly tries to get her attention by calling her Alina. While a confused Adelina turns around, Alexis fiercely hypes himself up for a high-stakes romantic confession. Noticing his intensely serious glare, Adelina corrects his persistent name mistake while nervously questioning his dark mood. Pure terror suddenly flashes in Adelina's wide eyes as she completely misinterprets his heavy silence. Violently misunderstanding the situation, Adelina assumes the stumbling prince is nervously preparing to introduce his secret mistress. Desperate to secure her future alimony, she hastily offers to cook dinner herself as a grand gesture of goodwill. She eagerly suggests inviting his supposedly secret lover to dinner, promising to create the perfect comfortable atmosphere for them to talk. The grand, sprawling estate stands quietly under the darkening sky as evening peacefully falls over the rural retreat. Adelina furiously fries up her freshly gathered ingredients, entirely focused on executing her brilliant diplomatic dinner plan. The prince happily praises the mouth-watering agillo, completely oblivious to his wife's wild and chaotic misunderstanding. Brushing off being called Liliana, Adelina proudly explains the rustic maritime origins of her herb-infused mushroom dish. Staring at the empty chair meant for his mistress, a sweating Adelina nervously wonders if they are being watched from the shadows. Shattering the tense silence, the prince suddenly calls out to her with yet another entirely incorrect name. Bracing herself for the ultimate mistress reveal, Adelina enthusiastically accepts his invitation for a private lakeside walk. Glaring at the towering estate, Adelina mentally prepares herself for the scandalous secret conversation she firmly believes is coming. Adelina arrives in a stunning white dress, completely taking the waiting prince's breath away. Adelina looks around in utter confusion as Lord Danforth suddenly vanishes into the dark night. Hidden in the bushes, the loyal guards aggressively restrain Lord Danforth to ensure the prince's romantic walk goes completely undisturbed. The silent struggle continues in the shadows as the royal aides fiercely protect their master's fleeting chance at true love. Leading her to a small boat, the prince softly invites her aboard while she frantically waits for the mistress' confession. Her wild imagination completely takes over, falsely praising his brilliant strategic mind for choosing an isolated boat for an illicit confession. A sudden gust of wind violently rocks the small wooden boat, sending a terrified Adelina tumbling forward. Reacting instantly, the handsome prince catches his falling bride in a tight, fiercely protective embrace. Frozen in shock, Adelina stammers as she realizes she is completely wrapped in his strong, warm arms. Pulling away, Adelina desperately tries to hide her racing heart, foolishly convincing herself the romantic embrace was just an accident. Blushing furiously in the shadows, she silently thanks the pitch-black night for hiding her incredibly flushed cheeks. Adelina sits quietly in a rowboat, enjoying the pleasant breeze as the oars splash through the water. Taking in the lovely scenery, she recalls Gordon's complaints about endless work and wonders if the prince managed to enjoy this retreat with his mistress. The prince suddenly interrupts her quiet thoughts, urging her to look up at the sky. Startled by the splashing water, Adelina gazes upward in mild confusion. Her eyes widen in pure amazement as she beholds a breathtakingly beautiful sight above them. A vast, shimmering starry night sky reflects perfectly in her awestruck, sparkling eyes. The prince gently remarks on how incredibly rare it is to witness such a beautiful starry sky. He softly confesses his genuine gladness at being able to share this majestic view together with her. Adelina stares at him in breathless silence, completely taken aback by his tender expression. Clutching her dress, she awkwardly thanks him before nervously asking if he originally brought her here to introduce his mistress. The prince bows his head slightly, explaining that he brought her out today to finally speak his mind. Bowing deeply in the rowboat, he sincerely apologizes for all of his past rudeness towards her. He admits doing terrible things, pleading for her to watch over him from now on if it isn't too late. He solemnly vows his change of heart, declaring that he finally understands the truth. Confused, Adelina wonders if he means he finally realized who his truly important person is. Suddenly, a brilliant shooting star streaks across the dark sky as an excited voice calls out to Agostina. Gazing at the shower of falling stars, Adelina stubbornly convinces herself that there is absolutely no way she could be his important person. Changing the subject entirely, she excitedly reminds the prince that wishing 3 times upon a shooting star makes it come true. Clasping her hands together, she frantically wishes for an amicable divorce, plenty of alimony, and a relaxing retirement. Gasping for breath, she realizes she got so caught up in wishing for alimony that she completely forgot about the prince's wishes. She turns to find the prince with his eyes closed, hands tightly clasped in a deep, silent prayer. Watching him pray, Adelina recalls how the prince has conducted town inspections since long ago. She remembers admiring him for always listening to the people and taking action for the country no matter how busy he was. During the miserable days worked to the bone by her mother, catching a glimpse of the prince felt like her only stroke of luck. The prince remains perfectly still under the meteor shower, pouring his absolute heart into his silent prayer. Adelina gazes at his devoted profile, her eyes shimmering with unspoken emotions. She reflects that the prince she actually married turned out a bit out of control and entirely different from her childhood imagination. Despite his flaws, his unwavering dedication to the country's future remains completely unchanged even when he overworks himself. She wonders if even a man who seemingly has everything still relies on the stars, touched that he still cares for a mistaken hindrance like her. Staring at his back, she realizes she has grown fond of him and wonders if his supposed mistress candidates actually stem from his own unrequited love. Closing her own eyes in heartfelt prayer, she silently wishes for the man she admires to be truly happy. She earnestly begs the starry night to make the prince's dearest wish come true. The brilliant night sky slowly fades into the gentle clouds of a passing season. Even as summer passes and autumn arrives, Adelina's decorative princess life remains exactly the same. She spends her peaceful days tending the garden and cooking fresh harvests, completely ignoring the lingering gossip about the prince's starry wishes. Although living a quiet life, she urgently seeks out Conrad to confess a deeply troubling problem. Peeking around the corner, she watches Prince Alexis with profound concern. Conrad notes that the sleep-deprived prince finally fell asleep while preparing for an upcoming alliance treaty, barely comforted by her fatigue-relieving herbal tea. Frantic, Adelina ignores the politics and begs Conrad to help her rescue the exhausted prince, while Conrad eagerly asks for her chamomile tea recipe. Snuggling close in his sleep, the prince suddenly murmurs the secret linden flower ingredient of her tea, leaving her completely stunned. Realizing the tea was blended with rose hips, Adelina panics. Sighing in resignation, she accepts that it cannot be helped as the sleeping prince slumps against her. Carefully adjusting his resting position, she wonders if a little more support like this will suffice. Despite doubting he truly wants her lap, she resolves to let this supposedly useless princess serve as the prince's pillow for now. Gently shushing the curious alpacas, she warns them to stay quiet while His Highness slumbers peacefully. Startled footsteps break the silence as an observer stumbles upon the tranquil scene, gasping in surprise. Observing the peaceful prince, the onlooker realizes his heartfelt wish might have finally been granted just a little bit. Meanwhile, rumors swirl around the radiant Princess Priscilla at a grand, towering castle. An attendant formally announces that all preparations for their grand departure to the Miracle Kingdom are finally complete. Vowing to rescue her beloved Prince Alexis, Priscilla convinces herself that a wicked witch must have deceived him into marriage. Despite his captivating beauty and legendary wisdom, Prince Alexis remains infamous as the cold, untouchable ice prince. Convinced the shotgun marriage is an impossible sham, Priscilla boldly declares herself the real bride as they approach the Miracle Kingdom. Hearing rumors of the prince's deep affection for his new bride, Princess Priscilla proudly stands her ground as the true contender. Enraged by the news, Priscilla furiously concludes that consort Adelina must be a wicked witch manipulating the prince with dark magic. Recalling terrifying ancient tales of kingdom-destroying witches manipulating men's hearts, she solidifies her absolute hatred for Adelina. Brandishing her authority, she loudly vows to banish the supposed witch and force the blinded prince to open his eyes. Gazing toward the sprawling miracle kingdom, she desperately begs Prince Alexis to hold on until her triumphant arrival. Back at the palace, Adelina suddenly shivers from a creeping chill, quickly waving off her attendant's concern about a potential cold. Alexis gently presents her with another vibrant bouquet, smoothly complimenting his stunningly beautiful bride. She reflects on his relentless daily flower deliveries to the detached palace, silently wishing he wouldn't keep botching her name. Swayed by his heart-meltingly sweet words, she admits she almost mistakenly believed she was his truly destined partner. A sharp, sudden voice slices through the romantic tension, calling out directly to Prince Alexis. Princess Priscilla makes a dazzling, dramatic entrance, proudly announcing her long-awaited arrival from the Western Kingdom. The surrounding courtiers instantly erupt into awed whispers, completely captivated by the princess's undeniably adorable appearance. Priscilla greets Adelina with feigned politeness, offering belated marriage congratulations while subtly highlighting her older, mature appearance. Feigning innocent frustration, Priscilla dramatically complains that everyone treats her like a child, claiming she deeply envies Adelina. Adelina humbly dismisses the praise by citing her own lack of distinct features, while the mesmerized crowd continues fawning over Priscilla's adorable pouting. Alexis fiercely defends his wife by suddenly kissing her hair, smoothly declaring that his elegant bride never loses a single shred of her dignity. Priscilla freezes in utter shock, completely flabbergasted and visibly twitching at the prince's bold public display of affection. Adelina gracefully thanks him before Alexis dismissively compliments Priscilla's gaudy jewels, coldly claiming he entirely forgot she was standing there. Desperate to reclaim his attention, Priscilla complains of travel fatigue and boldly asks Alexis to accompany her alone to the terrace. Watching the two royals stand side by side, Adelina heartbreakingly realizes they look exactly like a perfect prince and princess plucked straight from a fairy tale. The whispering crowd notes how much the pair resembles true lovers, gossiping about whether the old marriage rumors were actually true all along. Adelina overhears devastating whispers that the marriage talks would have succeeded if His Highness hadn't already been married before the alliance signing. Though some call it a tragic shame for Priscilla, others optimistically insist His Highness was simply fated to be united with Lady Adelina. Crushed by the agonizing weight of reality, Adelina silently and painfully concludes that she is absolutely not the prince's destined partner. Believing she is unworthily blocking the prince from his true bride, Adelina begins to swoon as he frantically calls out a mistaken name. Alexis swiftly catches her collapsing form, his voice laced with urgent concern as he checks if she is all right. Adelina wakes in hazy confusion, completely shocked when Alexis insists on abandoning the upcoming alliance signing to rush her back to the detached palace. She desperately begs him not to go to such trouble while Priscilla waits, but he fiercely scolds her for constantly putting herself down. Sitting in the departing carriage, Adelina downplays her dizziness while silently accepting she isn't his destined one. Prince Alexis stares at her with deep concern, desperately urging her to remember that someone truly worries about her. He gently explains that his visits to the detached palace will decrease since he must accompany Princess Priscilla on her inspections. Convinced she is just in the way of his true destiny, Adelina firmly resolves not to meddle. A heavy, painful silence falls between them as their eyes lock in unspoken longing. Refusing to let her slip away, Alexis passionately vows that he will definitely come to see her. Adelina's eyes widen in breathless shock at his intense, desperate promise. She melancholically imagines a world where the prince happily married Princess Priscilla if he had never met Adelina. Forcing a brave smile, she touches her face and softly assures him that she is perfectly fine. She silently vows to gracefully step aside and bid him farewell with a smile if he chooses to remarry. A few days later, a desperate Alexis tries to sneak away on horseback, only to be caught red-handed by Conrad. Conrad mercilessly shuts down the prince's plea to visit his wife for just a little while. He strictly reminds the exhausted prince that his endless daily schedule leaves absolutely no time for detached palace visits. Later, during an agricultural inspection, an official explains how a witch saved the village from famine by creating new crops. Princess Priscilla recoils in sheer terror, arrogantly claiming her kingdom would never eat crops tainted by a witch. Alexis suppresses his irritation, stepping forward to respectfully challenge her narrow-minded views on witches. Throwing a massive tantrum in the fields, Priscilla loudly whines about her luxurious dress getting dirty. She forces her exhausted attendant to carry her piggyback, endlessly complaining about wanting to go home immediately. Alexis stares at the spoiled princess in absolute disbelief, utterly disgusted by her pathetic display. Furious at her foolishness, he sharply realizes that Adelina would never behave so inconsiderately during an inspection. He fondly envisions Adelina wearing her simple apron dress, happily exchanging recipes and chatting with the local farmers. In his mind's eye, his graceful wife walks effortlessly along the dirt paths, bringing true meaning to the inspection. Grounding himself in reality, Alexis passionately explains that deep-rooted discrimination against witches still exists in their country. He proudly reveals their new magic research facility, established to overcome prejudice and create a nation of equals. Priscilla completely ignores his heartfelt speech, dismissively waving him off to the next site. Hitting his absolute breaking point, Alexis furiously demands to be released so he can finally see his bride. Conrad calmly intercepts him, questioning a disturbing rumor that the prince gazed at Priscilla with soft, loving eyes. Alexis wildly defends himself, shouting that he only narrowed his eyes because her gaudy jewels were blinding him. A sinister aura surrounds Conrad as he venomously criticizes the princess's complete lack of noble common sense. Realizing Priscilla is just hopelessly spoiled, Conrad expresses deep sympathy for her endlessly suffering subordinates. Gordon eagerly chimes in, comparing Priscilla's tacky style to Adelina's wonderful, highly praised taste. He happily reports that Adelina's trend-setting style of using fresh, hand-grown flowers has taken the high society by storm. Alexis swells with immense pride hearing his beloved wife praised, noting the sudden high demand for skilled gardeners. Driven utterly crazy by missing her, Alexis begs for a secret route to the detached palace to taste her home cooking. Conrad relentlessly denies the request, insisting that the prince must remain glued to Priscilla's side for a crucial reason. His expression darkening, Conrad reveals highly concerning information regarding the visiting princess. He reports that Princess Priscilla is actively snooping around for any information concerning consort Adelina. A sharp chill of dread pierces Alexis as his eyes widen in pure shock. Conrad confirms he overheard Priscilla ordering a messenger to infiltrate the kingdom's magic research facility. The situation escalates drastically as Conrad reveals she also deployed spies to investigate Adelina at the detached palace. Prince Alexis coldly declares that he would throw Princess Priscilla out of the kingdom immediately if he had his way. His aide cautions him to wait, warning that Priscilla might be actively intending to harm Lady Adelina. Alexis acknowledges the agonizing risk, knowing that banishing the princess without decisive proof could create a catastrophic rift between their nations. Gripping the doorframe, he passionately vows to reach his bride no matter what and desperately begs her to wait for him. Alexis urgently orders his loyal knights Conrad and Gordon to immediately reinforce the security at the detached palace. He solemnly entrusts his beloved bride's absolute safety to their capable hands. Accepting that he cannot see her for a while, the prince resolves to keep Princess Priscilla completely occupied. This deliberate distraction will ensure the dangerous royal cannot get anywhere near his vulnerable wife. He sharply commands his men to create a flawless system that allows an immediate response if Priscilla tries to start anything. Gazing out over the sprawling estate, Alexis internally promises to risk everything he has to ensure absolutely no one harms her. Back at the detached palace, a frantic maid rushes up to Adelina to deliver some shocking news. The outraged maids complain that the prince skipped visiting his own wife again to go on an inspection with Princess Priscilla. Adelina calmly pets an alpaca and gently tells them not to get so worked up on her behalf. Conrad steps forward to address the situation, but the princess kindly cuts him off to say they should just focus on what they can do. She remains remarkably composed, assuring him that His Highness surely has his own valid reasons. Changing the subject entirely, Danforth curiously asks the princess about the massive alpaca derby sign she is enthusiastically painting. Adelina explains that a distressed shepherd recently sent her a letter, seeking wisdom on how to sell a few alpacas that had sneaked into his sheep flock. To solve the problem, she brilliantly decided to host an alpaca derby at the villa to show the townsfolk how incredibly fast the creatures can run. Her maids excitedly cheer for the idea, eager to set up lively food stalls for the grand occasion. Watching her vibrant smile, Conrad sighs in profound relief as he realizes the princess seems as beautifully unchanged as ever. He reflects that he had been deeply worried Princess Priscilla's sudden presence might cause some terrible misunderstandings. He internally praises the heavens that Adelina doesn't seem troubled by the agonizing rumors at all. As Adelina cheerfully grooms a fluffy alpaca, she secretly concludes that the prince truly is growing close to Priscilla to soothe his wounded heart. Believing she was merely a temporary replacement after Ella's rejection, Adelina decides she should properly thank Priscilla for cleaning up after her foolish sister. The day of the highly anticipated alpaca derby finally arrives, drawing a massive, buzzing crowd to the lively starting gates. Spectators enthusiastically place their bets while an announcer loudly proclaims that the Princess Cup Alpaca Derby will begin shortly. Meanwhile, Princess Adelina delightfully hands out homemade sweets, happily offering her delicious muffin recipe to a curious townsman. Danforth alerts her that the race is about to start, while she silently hopes the people will continue to enjoy this sweet taste even after she leaves. The loud starting signal blares across the field, and the fluffy competitors burst forward in a thunderous, comical stampede. The crowd goes completely wild, with one spectator screaming in shock that his friend bet an entire month's salary on alpaca number 3. Looking around at the kind maids, the helpful servants, and her loyal knights, Adelina realizes just how deeply attached she has grown to this peaceful life. With a heavy heart, she tragically concludes that it is finally time to return everything, acknowledging that the prince was never truly meant to be hers. Scolding herself for feeling reluctant to leave, she convinces herself that her departure will finally allow Prince Alexis and Princess Priscilla to freely be together. Suddenly, Prince Alexis bursts onto the scene on horseback, intensely calling out the mistaken name Ekaterina as he spots her in the crowd. Leaning down from his majestic steed, he fiercely demands that she get on so they can finally speak alone. Adelina stares up at him in utter bewilderment, completely flustered by His Highness's dramatic and incredibly unexpected arrival. Riding together away from the crowd, Alexis smoothly praises the alpaca derby and compliments her for always coming up with such highly amusing ideas. The royal couple rides silently through the dappled shade of the tranquil forest, leaving the raucous festival far behind them. Breaking the quiet tension, Alexis asks if she has been well while once again mistakenly referring to her as Ekaterina. Adelina dryly confirms she is fine since he is still using the wrong name, and bitterly asks if he came to report that his grand romance with Priscilla has been fulfilled. Unfazed by her sharp tone, Alexis earnestly confesses that he came because he was deeply worried and absolutely needed to see her with his own eyes. He firmly admits he was terrified of what Princess Priscilla might do to her. Alexis stares at her intensely, knowing she is the stubborn type to hide her struggles, and vows not to miss even the slightest change in her demeanor. He suddenly leans in incredibly close, intimately invading her personal space as he carefully searches her wide, stunned eyes for any sign of distress. Noting her visibly troubled expression, he gently begs her to tell him absolutely anything that has happened, promising he will listen to every single word. Adelina nervously stammers about Princess Priscilla, internally convincing herself that she absolutely must not ruin his happiness by mentioning her own upcoming departure. Alexis cuts her off in absolute panic, his striking face twisting in terror as he frantically demands to know if Princess Priscilla has already reached the villa. Adelina stares back at his terrified expression in complete bewilderment, thoroughly shocked by the legendary Ice Prince's sudden and desperate loss of composure. Prince Alexis rides back to the estate in a panic, visibly relieved to arrive before anyone uncovers his secrets. He apologizes to Adelina for cutting the retreat short, explaining that Princess Priscilla personally requested they host a royal ball next week. Adelina calmly accepts the news, silently bracing herself for him to officially announce his relationship with Priscilla at the event. Noticing her quiet demeanor, Alexis praises her perceptiveness while sensing something is slightly off about her. Pulling her close on his horse, he gently presents her with a beautiful bouquet of fresh camellias. He stares deeply into her eyes and fiercely swears he will never let anyone hurt her. Adelina stammers a breathless agreement as the unexpected intimacy catches her completely off guard. Meanwhile, an alpaca named Pecorina proudly wears a flower crown after winning a local contest. Adelina waves goodbye as the prince rides off to resume his duties, leaving her blushing furiously. The maids eagerly gossip about how fate brought the perfect couple together, making Adelina cringe as she realizes they saw everything. Staring at the beautiful flowers, she bitterly convinces herself that his kind words are mere pity for a wife he plans to discard. A heavy sadness settles in her heart as she accepts she was never his destined true love. On the night of the grand ball, Adelina arrives arm in arm with Prince Alexis, drawing amazed whispers from the admiring crowd. While Alexis asks if she feels unwell, Adelina nervously wonders when he will finally drop the divorce announcement. Princess Priscilla suddenly makes a grand entrance, strutting forward in a dazzling golden gown and calling out to the prince. Adelina recognizes the stunning dress as nearly identical to the one Ella wore on that fateful night. Alexis glares at Priscilla in absolute disgust, grumbling about her blinding outfit and wishing she would stop glowing. Stepping onto the dance floor, Priscilla confidently asks the prince to honor her with a dance. Adelina silently marvels at Priscilla's striking, almost non-human beauty, certain no man could refuse her. Without missing a beat, Alexis bluntly rejects the princess, firmly stating he promised his first dance to his wife. Priscilla stands frozen in absolute shock as the surrounding nobles gasp at the blatant rejection. She throws a furious tantrum about being his next consort, but Alexis calmly defends the court tradition of dancing with his current wife. Boiling with rage, Priscilla loudly commands the entire ballroom to listen to her. She dramatically points directly at Adelina, screaming that Prince Alexis is being deceived by that wicked woman. Priscilla confidently declares that the mysterious lady from the previous ball was absolutely nothing like the current princess consort. The royal officials whisper in panic as the situation quickly spirals out of control. Priscilla reveals that royal mages recorded an unusual magical surge that night, claiming faint traces of magic still linger on Adelina. Thrusting her finger forward, she demands that everyone recognize exactly what this evidence means. She aggressively accuses Adelina of being a vile witch who used forbidden magic to steal the throne of consort. The ballroom erupts into horrified murmurs as Adelina stares at her accuser in stunned silence. Looking down, Adelina silently admits to herself that Priscilla's wild accusations hold a twisted sliver of truth. She remembers Ella arriving in a dress far too expensive and magnificent to be hidden from their cruel family. Connecting the dots, Adelina realizes the legendary gown and glass slippers must have been conjured by a real magician. Her heart breaks as she acknowledges the radiant girl the prince fell in love with wasn't the dull, plain woman standing here now. She quietly accepts that it makes perfect sense for Priscilla to assume she used wicked magic to deceive everyone. Priscilla smirks triumphantly, ruthlessly taunting Adelina to defend her honor. Adelina bites her lip, knowing that revealing the real truth would permanently tarnish the prince's spotless reputation. She calculates that a standard divorce would only bring endless disgrace and complicate Priscilla's inevitable rise to true consort. Sacrificing herself, Adelina decides to embrace the role of the wicked witch to guarantee Prince Alexis his happy ending. Staring blankly ahead, she bravely resolves to accept the false accusations, even if it means facing the executioner's guillotine. Adelina fondly reflects on a kind man who consistently showed concern for her, even as her first love slipped away and she acted as a mere stand-in. Accepting her fate, she concludes that his kindness is more than enough for her as long as he can finally find true happiness. As they walk together through the grand hall, Prince Alexis suddenly pauses and calls out to the princess. He stares her down with intense frustration, demanding to know if that is really all she has to say. Turning his fury upon Princess Priscilla, Alexis violently commands silence and threatens that no allied royal will be spared if they insult his wife again. He coldly warns the trembling princess to consider herself incredibly lucky, claiming he would have taken her head himself if she had gone any further. Panicking at his tyrannical outburst, Adelina desperately begs His Highness to stop scaring his supposed future bride. She frantically tries to smooth things over by taking the blame, nervously insisting that Princess Priscilla simply misunderstood the situation. Alexis turns his gaze toward his frantic wife, his features softening into an expression of profound tenderness. He fiercely vows to protect her from any mud, ashes, or stains, promising to keep his bride safe no matter what happens. Tears well up in Adelina's eyes as she points out that he still cannot say her name right, heartbrokenly recalling how he only had eyes for Ella at the ball. Stepping forward with absolute resolve, Alexis apologizes to the crowd for the commotion and announces his intention to personally clear up the misunderstanding. Terrified that the truth will completely destroy his royal honor, Adelina desperately begs him to keep their secret hidden. She tearfully insists on playing the villain to secure his happiness, blurting out a dramatic confession about the one who truly captured his heart that night. To the absolute shock of the entire room, Adelina loudly declares that the mystery princess from the ball was actually her. A stunned silence washes over the grand hall as the noble guests gasp in collective bewilderment. Suddenly, Ella makes a grand entrance alongside a tall magician, prompting gasps as someone recognizes her as the real princess from that fateful night. The crowd easily identifies Ella's iconic dress and shimmering glass slippers, realizing there is absolutely no mistake about her identity. Princess Priscilla completely loses her mind, shrieking in absolute terror that this newcomer must be a wicked sorceress. Absolute chaos erupts among the confused nobles as they desperately try to figure out who the true princess really is. Adelina recoils in pure panic, completely overwhelmed by her stepsister's sudden and highly disruptive arrival. Ignoring the massive uproar, Ella happily rushes over to Adelina to express how much she missed her and fret over her eating habits. The paranoid crowd immediately suspects Ella of witchcraft as well, prompting an enraged Priscilla to demand the guards seize her immediately. Prince Alexis firmly shuts down the escalating hysteria, his commanding voice cutting through the chaos to declare this is not the time for such foolishness. A formal announcement rings out, officially presenting Adelina's stepsister Ella as the destined princess who danced with the prince at the royal ball. Adelina completely panics over being suspected of witchcraft, terrified that the prince's pristine honor will be permanently ruined by this disastrous revelation. Unbothered by the tense atmosphere, Ella brightly explains that she simply wanted to visit her beloved sister and check on her well-being. While Adelina desperately tries to calm her sister down, the shocked nobles continue marveling at the undeniable proof of Ella's iconic dress and slippers. Ella enthusiastically agrees to explain the complicated situation herself, cheerfully confirming that Adelina's bold confession was entirely true. Beaming at the bewildered crowd, Ella happily confirms that she indeed had a wonderful time dancing with Prince Alexis on the night of the ball. The magician smoothly interjects that the ball was merely one-night story, pointing out that he now stands by Ella's side while Adelina rightfully stands beside the prince. The stubborn nobles immediately protest this arrangement, loudly arguing that Princess Adelina being a fake is a massive, unforgivable problem. Alexis humbly apologizes for causing anxiety but firmly insists he wants everyone to judge Adelina as she is now, rather than comparing her to the phantom of that night. He boldly challenges the entire assembly, demanding to know if anyone truly believes Adelina has been lacking in her duties as his princess consort. Sweating bullets, Adelina internally screams that she is nothing but lacking no matter how anyone looks at her. She braces herself for a massive eruption of complaints, painfully aware of her preference for simple flower corsages, carrot farming, and completely off-base tea party topics. Suddenly, the Minister of Foreign Affairs loudly declares that Princess Adelina is an unparalleled talent with an astonishing reputation and ready wit. Adelina stares in utter shock, completely convinced the minister is just generously paying lip service to cover for her embarrassing flaws. To her absolute disbelief, several noble ladies step forward to eagerly praise Adelina's elegant, refreshing use of flowers over restrictive heavy jewelry. The ladies enthusiastically commend her fresh, interesting conversations and credit her for successfully originating the kingdom's highly popular slow life trend. A joyful maid excitedly brags that serving Adelina's handmade muffins earned her an instant marriage proposal. The ladies gossip eagerly about Adelina's immense influence, crediting her for the trending alpaca derby and a sharp rise in library visitors. Prince Alexis warmly praises Adelina as the perfect consort, though she humbly insists she hasn't done anything special. An official nervously interrupts to report lingering magic from Adelina, while Alexis firmly urges her to stay by his side. Princess Priscilla suddenly interjects about feeling magic from her sister-in-law as a mysterious figure violently pulls her into a dance. The striking newcomer proudly wields a staff, boldly declaring that her sister-in-law genuinely possesses the talent of a witch. A panicked knight sprints down the hall shouting Adelina's name, catching the stunned attention of the entire room. The rogue witch casually admits to putting the guards to sleep to ensure absolutely no interruptions. Furious at the blatant disrespect, Alexis furiously demands answers while Priscilla angrily denies that the consort could be a witch. With a knowing smirk, the witch calmly asks Priscilla if she has noticed anything strange about the prince. She gleefully points out that the prince constantly butchers her supposed sister-in-law's name. The witch reveals the shocking truth that Adelina intentionally cursed herself so she wouldn't mistakenly fall in love with him. She taunts the crowd, noting that nobody would ever fall in love with a man who continually gets their name wrong. A flashback to their wedding ceremony shows a cold Alexis commanding his new bride to listen while calling her Evelina. He ruthlessly crushes her heart by declaring her name doesn't matter because he is already smitten with the girl from the ball. Realizing he has no interest in her, Adelina quietly accepts her tragic role as the substitute bride. She silently prays the prince continues getting her name wrong forever to protect herself from further heartbreak. Back in the present, Alexis's eyes widen in sheer, undeniable horror as the devastating truth finally strikes him. The witch mercilessly points out that Adelina used the wrong names as a shield to stop herself from getting hurt. Alexis stands utterly paralyzed by guilt, completely overwhelmed by the pain he unknowingly caused. A massive explosion of magical runes and raw energy suddenly erupts from the memory of their wedding kiss. Alexis realizes with absolute dread that his own harsh words actually cast the spell preventing him from saying her real name. Adelina nervously admits she thought people were just making weird faces every time he mispronounced her name. His face pale with desperation, Alexis fiercely demands to know how to break the terrible curse. A violent whirlwind of chaotic magic suddenly materializes, completely trapping Adelina and the prince in its eye. Alexis stands his ground defensively as thick, magical vines rapidly wrap around Adelina's delicate gown. The witch grins maliciously, revealing she layered her own powerful magic directly onto Adelina's existing curse. She challenges the prince's true love, declaring that only by calling Adelina's true name can he shatter the binding curse. Trapped in the magical thicket, Adelina cries out in panic that breaking the curse is impossible since he has never said it once. Gritting his teeth with fierce determination, Alexis vows he will never let anyone take his princess consort away. He sincerely apologizes for his past cruelty, confessing he originally planned to divorce her at the earliest opportunity. Adelina smiles sadly, admitting it was only natural since she fully expected a swift divorce right away. Alexis passionately reveals that from the moment she boldly arrived riding an alpaca, he couldn't take his eyes off her. He warmly praises her incredible handmade sweets, confessing that visiting her at the detached palace quickly became his greatest joy. Smiling tenderly, he declares her far superior to the royal head chef, especially when she affectionately feeds him carrots. A profound, overwhelming warmth washes over the couple as the sincerity of their shared memories takes hold. Alexis openly admits his immense pride in watching her reputation flourish as she perfectly fulfilled her royal duties. Staring into her eyes with pure devotion, he confesses he could never let go of someone as precious as her. Adelina's eyes widen and sparkle with unshed tears, completely moved by his desperate, heartfelt confession. Alexis reveals that during that starry night at the lake, he desperately wished upon the stars to be with her forever and ever. Overwhelmed by her buried emotions, Adelina tearfully admits she can no longer hold back, believing she treated him terribly and doesn't deserve his love. She recalls the moment she wished upon a star for a separation allowance, frantically convincing herself she is not the person the prince thinks she is. Tears stream down her face as she resolves to stop hesitating, finally ready to admit what her heart truly desired all along. With absolute sincerity, she tearfully confesses that she loves him. Frantic and desperate, Alexis searches her face while rapidly calling out incorrect names like Katerina and Carolina. The prince continues his frantic guessing, urgently calling her Evelina and Magdalena. His desperation deepens as he tries Emiliana, Fiorina, and Adriana. Struggling to find the right name, he agonizingly guesses Alpina and Alina. Clutching his own throat in sheer frustration, the prince chokes out a desperate confession of his love. Trembling with emotion, Adelina softly utters the first letter of her true name. She finally speaks her real name, Adelina, revealing her true identity to the stunned prince. The instant her name is spoken, the invisible magical barrier surrounding her shatters into countless glittering pieces. Adelina stands paralyzed as the remnants of her self-imposed spell fade into the air. She reveals she cast a spell on herself to seal away her feelings, terrified of loving him too deeply. Alexis finally calls her Adelina, breaking the magic entirely as she tearfully blames him for shattering her defenses. Overwhelmed, she realizes that despite being a mere supporting character, his actions have caused her hidden love to helplessly overflow. She practically collapses from the overwhelming weight of her unleashed emotions. Pulling her into a fierce embrace, Alexis passionately declares that she is his only love and the only woman who could ever be his princess consort. Clutching his coat, Adelina tearfully asks if she is truly allowed to dream and wish for this beautiful reality. Burying her face in his chest, she sobs that she never actually believed her prince would come for her. Alexis holds her tenderly as she stammers out the depths of her long-suppressed feelings. He gently reassures her that while her love grew slowly, he had completely fallen for her right from the start. She realizes with touching clarity that she had been secretly longing for his embrace in the deepest corner of her heart. Alexis holds her close and repeatedly murmurs her true name, filling her soul with unimaginable happiness. A sudden shout to wake up snaps her out of the reverie, leaving her overjoyed that the prince can finally call her by her actual name. With renewed resolve, she accepts her royal destiny, certain that the true story of their love begins right here. She recalls attending the ball as a perfectly ordinary noble's daughter with weak magic, convinced no prince would ever be smitten with someone lacking glass slippers or a pumpkin carriage. Watching the dazzling dancers, she accepted the harsh reality that a perfect happily ever after was nothing more than a fairy tale. Suddenly, a handsome stranger reached out his hand and asked her for a dance. Gazing into his eyes, she felt her heart flutter and knew in that instant that she loved him. They waltzed beautifully under the moonlight, completely unfazed by the looming threat of the magic breaking at midnight. Holding her firmly in the center of the grand hall, Prince Alexis vowed never to leave her side. A narrator reflects on the continuous series of hardships they faced until Princess Adelina and the prince's feelings finally connected. Chaos erupts in the royal halls as someone furiously demands to know where the prince is running off to instead of waiting for his princess of destiny. Conrad steps forward to introduce himself as the prince's chief secretary, questioning how a true princess of destiny could possibly be found at a simple ball. Gordon wrestles a struggling captive while Conrad announces the beginning of the official observation record of the prince's quest for a consort. Conrad praises the prince's high capabilities but firmly orders Gordon, the wet nurse's son, to keep strict watch so his highness cannot escape again. Sighing heavily, Conrad laments that the prince shows no signs of settling down, utterly obsessed with his romantic delusion of finding a fated princess of destiny. Two disguised figures sneak nervously through a grand archway, desperately hoping the prince will just choose a bride so they can finally rest easy. From the shadows, a sharp-eyed woman wielding a decorative fan suddenly spots the intruders and ominously calls out to them. A diligent royal attendant spots two elegantly dressed ladies wandering the palace halls and sharply questions their presence. The haughty lady confidently claims she has an invitation to the grand ball and arrogantly demands to be guided directly to the prince. The attendant calmly inspects the presented invitation, noting it belongs to Lady Hilda of Viscount Arlen's family. His eyes widen in sudden realization as he recognizes the deeply notorious name written on the crisp paper. Remembering her terrifying reputation as the aggressive engagement crusher, he politely hands the invitation back while silently vowing to keep her far away from the prince. Hilda irritably questions the route, while the attendant firmly directs them to the Great Hall to block her from approaching the royal VIPs. Furious at the delay, Hilda viciously snaps at the attendant and demands immediate access to the prince. She loudly degrades him as a mere useless servant, completely ignoring his logical explanation about the waiting order. The attendant bows his head slightly, offering a polite but firm apology to defuse the escalating tension. As Hilda storms off in frustration, her companion nervously steps forward to apologize to the attendant for their terrible rudeness. The gentle girl introduces herself as Adelina, leaving the attendant completely stunned by how drastically she differs from her overbearing sister. Feeling a strange sense of sympathy for the quiet sister, the attendant warmly offers to personally guide her to the Great Hall. Adelina happily accepts his kind offer, her polite and graceful demeanor a stark contrast to her sister's fiery arrogance. Escorting her through the towering corridors, the attendant deeply admires her impeccable manners and calm, kind-hearted nature. He melancholically reflects that the prince will likely never notice a hidden jewel like Adelina among the dazzling, ambitious nobility. Sometime later, a desperate Prince Alexis holds up a gleaming glass slipper and orders his men to tear the kingdom apart searching for its owner. The entire kingdom becomes consumed by the romantic tale of a beautiful, mysterious princess who vanished like a comet after the ball. Taking charge of the chaotic situation, the attendant furiously organizes search teams to hunt down the elusive princess of destiny. Exhausted from the endless search, Gordon loudly complains about the mystery woman while the attendant carefully reviews their next destination. The team realizes their next stop is the dreaded Arland estate, bracing themselves for whatever underhanded tricks Hilda might attempt. Inside the lavish estate, Hilda dramatically declares the glass slipper a perfect fit for her foot. Gordon stares in sheer, unadulterated disbelief at the glaringly obvious fake foot she shoved into the delicate shoe. He bluntly points out that she is using a carved wooden foot, mercilessly shattering her desperate illusion. Defeated, Hilda steps aside, allowing a plainly dressed Adelina to effortlessly slip her real foot into the sparkling glass shoe. The royal aides stare in absolute shock, realizing the humble plain girl is actually the mysterious princess they seek. Prince Alexis swiftly drops to his knees before the stunned Adelina, gently taking her foot in his hands. The surrounding attendants marvel at the seemingly romantic fairy tale moment unfolding flawlessly before their eyes. A heavily guarded royal carriage rattles down a rugged dirt path, carrying the newly minted princess far away from the grand capital. The attendant glares out the window in sheer disgust, furious that the prince aggressively forced Adelina into marriage only to instantly banish her to a distant estate. Convinced she must be trembling with absolute loneliness, he resolves to show her genuine kindness before the inevitable divorce. Arriving at the detached palace, he is completely flabbergasted to find Adelina cheerfully swinging a heavy hoe to plow a massive field. He watches in pure awe as the refined lady expertly manages a flock of sheep and cultivates fresh vegetables, wildly exceeding all his expectations. Realizing her immense untapped value, the attendant furiously resolves to manipulate the stubborn prince into keeping such an incredible wife. He successfully sparks the prince's interest using Adelina's meticulous reports, finding immense amusement in the prince's panicked reaction to her riding an alpaca. Riding back to the capital, the attendant smoothly feeds the prince calculated details about Adelina's unique and difficult circumstances. He slyly wonders aloud if she is truly finding peace at the detached palace, expertly planting seeds of curiosity in the prince's mind. The brilliant strategy works flawlessly as the normally icy prince begins showing genuine, uncharacteristic concern for Adelina's safety. Deciding she absolutely needs a personal knight, the prince reviews a profile and confidently selects Lord Danforth for the crucial job. Gordon sips his tea and casually questions the prince's highly specific choice of knight. The attendant praises Danforth's polite nature with women, but freezes in sheer surprise as he spots a highly concerning detail on the knight's profile. Flipping through a detailed profile, Conrad discovers that Danforth's secret hobby involves taking care of his pet hamsters. Shocked by the revelation, the men stare in utter disbelief at the listed special skill of making knitted dolls. They realize that the famously stoic Danforth secretly possesses the charming hobbies and skills of a dreamy young girl. An aide exasperatedly notes that Danforth even has a pet mouse named Poostar, completely shattering his serious image. The discovery finally explains why Danforth was previously caught talking to a random mouse and making adorable squeaking noises. Conrad brilliantly deduces that Danforth's gentle, quirky nature makes him the perfect, non-threatening companion for the princess. Because Danforth deeply understands fluffy animals, he serves as an excellent guard and conversational partner without ever clashing with Adelina's personality. One aide comically panics, violently suggesting that Adelina might accidentally have an affair since Danforth is undeniably good-looking. Realizing Prince Alexis refuses to properly acknowledge his feelings, the aides cleverly decide to use Danforth as a distraction to push the couple together. The loyal subordinates eagerly agree to make Danforth a noble sacrifice, thoroughly instigating his closeness with the princess. They strategically publicize the strong bond between Adelina and Danforth, fully aware that the two look picture-perfect standing side by side. While this staged closeness successfully threatens the prince's composure, Danforth purely views Adelina as adorable family rather than a romantic interest. Instead of using his royal authority to force her to stay, the prince shockingly restrained himself. Realizing his love for Adelina ran far deeper than anyone expected, the prince desperately wished upon a falling star. Terrified that she would leave if he got her name wrong, Alexis intensely prayed that Adelina would continue to stay by his side. His loyal aide gently reassures the anxious prince that his heartfelt wish will surely reach the heavens. The magical wish seemingly comes true as Adelina peacefully lets the exhausted prince rest his head upon her lap. Believing he is only pretending to be asleep, Adelina internally praises the prince's tactical genius for securing a lap pillow. As she gazes down at his resting face, a sudden realization softly shifts her perspective. Her quiet willingness to let him sleep sparks hope among the observers that she might finally reciprocate his deep feelings. Just as their romance seems guaranteed to blossom, a massive, unforeseen problem violently disrupts the peace. Princess Priscilla dramatically makes her entrance, confidently declaring how much she has been looking forward to meeting her supposed rival. The surrounding nobles nervously whisper about the awkward situation, well aware that the prince is already happily married. Priscilla's arrival drastically reduces the couple's time together while she suspiciously snoops around Adelina's affairs. The wicked princess shockingly crosses the line, loudly accusing Adelina of using dark magic to bewitch Prince Alexis and steal the consort title. Enraged but paralyzed by Priscilla's status as an allied royal, the loyal retainers grit their teeth in agonizing silence. Just as the tension reaches its breaking point, Prince Alexis fiercely steps forward to shield his beloved bride. Taking a protective stance in front of Adelina, the furious prince immediately takes decisive action against the slander. He passionately declares in front of the entire stunned court that Adelina is his one and only princess consort. The overwhelming power of his public confession effectively crushes any further doubts or interference. Basking in the peaceful aftermath, a beaming Alexis proudly shows off a fluffy knitted alpaca doll gifted to him by Adelina. The joyful prince happily informs his overworked secretary that he plans to take his beloved on a romantic, month-long honeymoon. Conrad practically explodes in shock upon hearing the outrageously long duration, especially since the prince already secretly finalized the travel plans. The frantic secretary tears his hair out, terrified that abandoning their diplomatic duties will spark a massive international incident. Accepting his cruel fate, Conrad tearfully vows to work his fingers to the bone while the royal couple enjoys their getaway. Having finally exchanged their passionate vows, the deeply in love couple shares a tender, intimate embrace. Riding together in a luxurious carriage, Adelina nervously admits she feels anxious about their long journey ahead. She reflects that despite being married in name for so long, they are finally starting to truly act like a loving couple. The prince excitedly reveals their grand destination is the legendary Fairy King's Palace, leaving Adelina wide-eyed in amazement. Because only royalty and their spouses can enter the magical realm, Alexis smoothly points out they will be entirely alone, causing Adelina to blush furiously. Adelina happily walks beside her sleepy alpaca, Pecorina, grateful to the royal officials for allowing her unique pet to tag along on the journey. She blushes deeply, her heart fluttering with sudden shyness now that the prince finally calls her by her real name. Eager for their private getaway, Adelina excitedly asks Prince Alexis if he managed to clear his busy schedule for their special trip together. The prince gently bids farewell to Lord Danforth as he guides his nervous bride and her alpaca to the terrifying, magical forest of mists. Adelina turns in surprise as a sudden voice calls out to her husband from the misty shadows. A handsome stranger excitedly greets Alexis, thrilled to unexpectedly cross paths with the prince in such a dangerous, mystical place. The cheerful newcomer introduces himself as Prince Demetrius of the Kingdom of Glory, proudly presenting his beautiful fiancée, Helena, to the stunned couple. Adelina politely introduces herself, completely awestruck to meet royalty from the powerful Eastern maritime nation. Demetrius laughs heartily, apologizing for missing their wedding while admitting how shockingly sudden Alexis's marriage seemed to the outside world. Admitting they forgot to hire a guide to the Fairy King's Palace, Demetrius smoothly invites himself and Helena to tag along with the royal couple. Alexis tightly grips Adelina's hand as they march through the tangled, overgrown forest, constantly checking to ensure she stays safe. Adelina gazes in quiet admiration at the elegant Helena, deeply impressed by the foreign princess's flawless, commanding aura of nobility. She nervously hesitates, secretly hoping to strike up a friendly conversation with the breathtaking woman walking silently beside her. Helena casts a sudden, piercing glare toward the bushes, her sharp eyes detecting something hidden in the dense foliage. A sparkling, magical light suddenly bursts from the shadows, catching the attention of the startled royal travelers. A tiny, cheerful fairy named Robin flutters out holding a glowing crystal lantern, playfully apologizing for keeping the prince and his bride waiting. Robin happily introduces himself as their official guide, pleasantly surprised to find 2 extra royal guests and a fluffy alpaca joining the tour. Adelina reaches into her woven basket, eagerly pulling out a batch of handmade sweets to offer the adorable little fairy. Suddenly, a heavy thud echoes through the misty woods as the group stops in their tracks. Alexis gently calls out his wife's name, his protective gaze never leaving her as the atmosphere shifts around them. He sincerely apologizes for rushing ahead, strictly warning her to stay close to his side to avoid getting lost in the dangerous woods. Demetrius nervously chuckles at the couple's intense affection, politely interrupting to ask Alexis a sudden question. Helena stares intently at Adelina, bluntly suggesting that the prince must be hiding a secret mistress somewhere. She coolly observes that the newlyweds don't seem as perfectly harmonious as a truly in-love couple should be. Before Adelina can defend her marriage, Robin proudly announces their arrival as a massive, swirling vortex of magical energy erupts before them. The blinding light clears to reveal the magnificent Fairy King's castle, leaving the human guests utterly speechless. Adelina gasps in pure wonder, her eyes sparkling as Robin cheerfully explains that the sprawling palace is completely filled with helpful fairies. Robin encourages the amazed guests to make themselves at home, promising that his fairy friends will gladly take excellent care of her fluffy alpaca. Alexis watches his wife's radiant smile, genuinely pleased that she is thoroughly enjoying the magical realm. Adelina marvels at the glowing crystal lights illuminating the castle, jokingly wishing she could take one back to the human world as a lovely souvenir. A mesmerizing, otherworldly voice suddenly echoes through the halls, warmly questioning if the human girl truly loves the castle that much. Adelina stands frozen in awe, completely captivated by the beautiful, melodic voice that sounds exactly like a heavenly song. A blinding aura of overwhelming magic floods the corridor, instantly causing the unprepared Helena to collapse heavily to the floor. Furious at the dangerous display of power, Alexis violently demands the Fairy King immediately reverse his overwhelming charm before Adelina gets permanently trapped. King Oberon materializes with an amused chuckle, smoothly ignoring the angry prince while casually noting that Adelina seems completely unaffected by his potent magic. Stepping closer, the majestic Fairy King peers down at the plain princess, deeply intrigued by the rare, mysterious magic swirling around her. Oberon smartly deduces that Alexis is immune to his royal charm because the prince is already bound by Adelina's spell, though Alexis fiercely denies being drawn to her by mere magic. Dismissing the prince's fierce glare, Oberon slyly shifts the conversation, declaring his intention to seek an audience with the elusive Lady Titania. The Fairy King casually leaves to fetch her, effortlessly advising his stunned guests to relax and enjoy their stay in the meantime. Alexis sighs heavily at the king's dramatic antics, though Adelina remains quietly troubled by Oberon's unsettling implications. Adelina marvels at the beautiful room and the stunningly lovely view stretching out from the balcony. To her absolute shock, Prince Alexis suddenly appears on the connected terrace, pleased that she likes the accommodation. Alexis smoothly admits he chose this specific place because he was thinking of her, leaving the princess completely flustered. Adelina eagerly asks where they should go sightseeing tomorrow, bringing up the water spirits fountain and the rare flower fields. Alexis coldly informs her that he has business to attend to all day and has already arranged for Robin to be her guide. Disappointed but understanding, she realizes he must have places to go since he's visited the Fey realm many times before. Tears well up in her eyes as Alexis softly calls her name, while she internally chides herself for selfishly feeling lonely. Alexis suddenly leans in incredibly close, leaving Adelina wide-eyed and completely unprepared for the sudden intimacy. Their faces hover mere inches apart, tension crackling in the quiet air as he gazes deeply into her eyes. Alexis smoothly plucks a speck of fairy dust from her hair, completely destroying the romantic tension she had imagined. Adelina realizes she completely misunderstood his intent, burning with intense embarrassment over her wild assumptions. Mortified by the misunderstanding, she abruptly wishes him a good night and frantically flees back into her room. Slamming the door shut, Adelina desperately tries to brush off a fairy's concern as she attempts to recover her lost composure. A cheerful flower fairy enthusiastically introduces herself, eagerly promising to take good care of Lady Adelina during her stay. Adelina warmly returns the greeting, kindly asking the vibrant little fairy to show her the ropes. Flustered by the fairy's suggestion of romantic incense for newlyweds, Adelina frantically requests a relaxing scent instead. Standing alone in her room, she reflects on how unreal it feels that the prince she admired for so long actually fell in love with her. Her dark insecurities creep back in as she recalls cruel rumors of the prince keeping a mistress, wishing she were a flawless lady instead. A sudden, sweet voice calls out her name from the balcony, instantly shattering her gloomy and spiraling thoughts. The flower fairy flutters back to her side, cheerfully apologizing for the wait while delivering a special treat. Adelina decides to push her heavy worries aside and enjoy the divine candied violets, determined to make the most of her trip. Gazing up at the moonlit sky, she can't help but wonder why the prince ventured off into the night all alone. She stares intensely into the dark, mysterious forest, deeply curious about where on earth her husband could be going. Somewhere deep within the shadowed woods, a mysterious voice softly declares how much they have missed someone. A stunning, ethereal fairy woman emerges from the darkness, intimately addressing her dearest Alexis. Back at the castle, a flashback reveals Alexis unapologetically admitting he forced Conrad to clear his schedule for a full month. The ominous cawing of crows echoes through the eerie, twisting branches of the dark and isolating forest. Startled by a sudden noise, Adelina freezes in her tracks as she navigates the unfamiliar and treacherous woods. A small fairy apologizes to Alexis for raising his voice, teasingly reminding the prince that this meeting was a secret from Adelina. Hiding in the shadows, Adelina's heart shatters as she overhears the exchange and wonders what terrible secret he is keeping. Crushed by doubt, Adelina frantically tries to pull herself together, terrified of embarrassing the prince with her unstable magic. Alexis suddenly notices her distress and asks what's wrong, but she forces a smile before a fairy guides them to their rooms. A beautiful tray of mouth-watering midnight snacks is presented to help ease the tension of the long journey. The lively fairies proudly present the absolutely delicious spread, boasting about their incredibly fine culinary work. Adelina kindly offers the freshly baked sweets to Robin and the others, desperately trying to mask her spiraling anxiety. Deep in the forest, the beautiful fairy Titania stares intensely at Alexis, boldly declaring how much she missed him. Flustered by the sudden declaration, the prince fiercely snaps back that he is entirely devoted to his beloved wife. Titania playfully sighs at his rigid reaction, casually teasing that the prince used to be much more entertaining. Alexis suddenly slams down a massive proposal stack, demanding she review the extensive plans for Adelina's grand surprise. A close-up reveals his intensely conflicted eyes as he whispers a hesitant, emotional confession into the quiet night. Haunted by his past cruelty, Prince Alexis reflects on how Adelina's name no longer matters because he has hopelessly fallen for her. Staring out at the magical night, he fiercely vows to do whatever it takes to make his precious bride smile again. Lacking the time to explain himself properly, Alexis hastily informs the fairy king that he will leave a heartfelt letter for Adelina. Frustrated by his own rushing, he decides a letter is the only way to convey his true feelings without causing further misunderstandings. In the letter, Alexis pours out his deep regrets over their disastrous first meeting, promising to dedicate himself entirely to her happiness. Entrusting the profound love letter to Robin the fairy, the prince asks him to deliver it and quietly begs Adelina to wait just a little longer. Meanwhile, Adelina sleeps peacefully, completely surrounded by a bed of glowing, magical flowers in the fairy king's towering castle. The tiny fairy Robin flutters around her pillow, cheerfully waking the slumbering princess to greet the beautiful new morning. Adelina sits up with a startled gasp, playfully lamenting that the potent fairy incense made her sleep entirely too soundly. Robin happily offers to help her get dressed for breakfast, leaving Adelina completely amazed by the incredible effects of the magical realm. Adorned with a stunning floral crown, she blushes softly as Robin reveals the gorgeous flowers are a special gift from the prince. Robin cheerfully declares that the princess is deeply loved, leaving Adelina wide-eyed and flustered by the unexpected romantic gesture. She nervously clutches the prince's mysterious letter, her heart racing as she struggles to process his sudden, overwhelming affection. Stepping out into the grand halls, she is suddenly intercepted by Princess Helena, who slyly teases her for being a late sleeper. Robin excitedly presents a magical guidebook to the landmarks, whispering the secret that Prince Alexis left early on a mysterious errand. Skimming through the countless tour options, Adelina wonders where her powerful husband could have possibly gone without her. The clever fairy points out a hidden gems section in the guidebook, bragging that it contains secret spots even fairies don't know about. Recalling Alexis's promise to show her around after his business, Adelina's eyes sparkle with excitement at the thought of surprising him. She eagerly asks Robin to guide her to the hidden gem after breakfast, only to be interrupted by Prince Demetrius calling her name. Demetrius and Helena approach the surprised princess, casually revealing that they also decided to go sightseeing in the magical forest. Cradling her fluffy alpaca, Adelina realizes with mild amusement that the foreign royals are using the exact same secret guidebook. The royal couple immediately begins bickering, with Helena coldly mocking Demetrius before turning her sharp gaze toward the solitary Adelina. Helena ruthlessly taunts Adelina about being left behind, snidely wishing her luck on avoiding a honeymoon divorce while riding such a weird beast. Desperate to diffuse the tension, Demetrius steps in and awkwardly confesses his genuine desire to spend time with his fierce fiancée. In a shocking flash of anger, Helena viciously slaps Demetrius across the face, leaving everyone absolutely paralyzed in stunned silence. Furious and embarrassed, The proud princess turns on her heel and angrily declares she is returning to the palace immediately. Helena storms off into the dangerous woods, screaming at her fiancé not to follow her while Adelina watches the explosive lovers quarrel in absolute disbelief. Despite the harsh words, Adelina's perceptive eyes catch a fleeting look of profound sadness on Helena's face just before she ran. Pausing by a glowing fairy spring, Demetrius calmly scoops up a handful of the sparkling, magical water to soothe his stinging cheek. He downs the refreshing water easily, offering a tired smile and thanking a deeply concerned Adelina for checking on him. Dropping a massive bombshell, Demetrius bitterly confesses that their supposedly perfect royal match is actually just a difficult arranged marriage. He melancholically reveals that Helena is secretly in love with someone else, only agreeing to marry him out of reluctant duty to her family. Blaming his own unreliability, Demetrius hopelessly plans to break off their engagement after the trip to finally set his fiancée free. When Adelina bluntly asks if he actually dislikes Helena, Demetrius clenches his fist and passionately declares that he truly loves her. He sadly admits his intense jealousy over Adelina's happy marriage, while Robin suddenly pops up to offer a magical solution to his heartbreak. The tiny fairy puffs out his chest, confidently promising to fix their shattered relationship if they just leave the heavy lifting to him. Robin excitedly offers to teach them how to brew the legendary fairy's medicine, guaranteeing an instant, flawless reconciliation between the feuding lovers. Tempted by the potion's alleged charm-up effects, Adelina eagerly agrees to help brew the magical concoction alongside the desperate prince. The group enthusiastically rallies together, rushing off to gather the mystical ingredients needed to save Demetrius's doomed romance. Looking back, Adelina darkly realizes her massive mistake in blindly trusting the fairy, never bothering to ask what the dangerous medicine actually did. Adelina and a fairy stand with an alpaca and baskets of gathered ingredients, deciding to collect more tomorrow since they still lack enough materials. Startled by someone standing far too close, Adelina bumps directly into Prince Alexis. Alexis casually asks if she enjoyed her day with Demetrius, prompting a flustered Adelina to stammer that she just got back. She quickly explains that Robin showed her around various places, secretly panicking because she cannot reveal they were gathering materials for a charm-up fairy potion. Alexis mentions he was meeting an acquaintance about a letter, leading Adelina to wonder where the prince actually went today. Alexis apologizes and states he will be gone again tomorrow morning, suggesting she have Robin show her around fairyland once more. He earnestly hopes she enjoys the sightseeing, while Adelina respectfully tells him not to worry about her. Adelina internally laments that she was excited for a honeymoon, realizing that while she doesn't mind him being busy, their feelings might not truly connect yet. Changing the subject with a bright smile, Adelina cheerfully asks what is for dinner today. She eagerly admits she is incredibly hungry after all the walking she did throughout the day. The royal couple arrives at the dining hall in elegant evening attire, briefly pausing at the grand entrance. Noticing an empty seat at the table, Alexis immediately asks Demetrius about Helena's whereabouts. Demetrius explains that she isn't feeling well and is resting quietly in her room. The group discusses that humans often feel unwell in fairyland, hoping Helena isn't still affected by earlier events and deciding to bring her nutritious food later. Demetrius notes that Adelina seems to be doing perfectly fine, briefly confusing the princess. Alexis smoothly praises Adelina for settling in so quickly when she first started living at the villa. Adelina admits she was out plowing fields shortly after arriving as a substitute, internally comparing herself to the delicately raised Helena. Shaking with embarrassment over her lack of confidence, Adelina curses herself for bringing up such unnecessary things while Alexis asks if the food isn't to her liking. She rapidly assures him the meal is delicious before nervously asking about his business plans for the following day, desperate to stay by his side. Gathering her courage, she softly asks if she could possibly join him on his errands. Alexis bluntly shuts down the request, stating firmly that it is simply not possible. He explains that there are still preparations to be made, leaving the matter completely closed. Realizing he had mentioned meeting an acquaintance, Adelina watches in shock as a frantic fairy suddenly interrupts their dinner. Alexis abruptly delegates his wife's care to Robin and sprints off, hastily apologizing to Adelina as he leaves. Demetrius smoothly attempts to salvage the awkward atmosphere, suggesting they enjoy the meal even without their respective partners. Sipping her drink, Adelina suspects Alexis is hiding something from her and bitterly scolds herself for expecting anything special. Later, Adelina wanders through the halls and asks a fairy if Prince Demetrius will be joining today's ingredient gathering. She overhears that Demetrius decided to stay behind to personally take care of the bedridden Helena, leaving Pekalina out as well. The fairy cheerfully informs Adelina that since she is so popular with the fairies, it will just be the two of them gathering today. Led down a grand corridor, Adelina internally assumes Demetrius is trying to break up with Helena for her own sake despite loving her deeply. Pondering the heavy emotional burden, Adelina wonders if she could ever make the same painful choice if placed in their position. She walks alone through the beautiful, luminous palace grounds, deeply questioning her own emotional strength. Arriving at a breathtaking spot, the fairy excitedly announces they have reached Queen Titania's favorite garden to gather the final ingredient. Adelina steps cautiously through the grand archways, entirely mesmerized by the ethereal, ancient pillars surrounding her. The fairy explains that the last ingredient is the playful love flower, a red bloom given by fairies when confessing true love. Suddenly sensing something amiss, the fairy desperately yells for Lady Adelina to stop in her tracks. Adelina spots Prince Alexis in the distance, completely bewildered as to why he is here instead of meeting his mysterious acquaintance. A stunningly beautiful fairy woman approaches Adelina, presenting a dark, shimmering flower directly to her. Adelina's eyes widen in absolute shock as her heart pounds wildly in her chest. She stares in awe at the legendary, playful love flower, its petals radiating an intense, magical glow. Recalling a local legend, Adelina realizes with a start that fairies only give the playful love flower under very specific circumstances. Her heart pounds violently as she remembers the flower is strictly meant for confessing true love. A fierce blush spreads across the prince's face as he gazes at her with deep affection. Adelina stands completely frozen, her heart thumping wildly against her ribs in sheer shock. Wildly misinterpreting the moment, she foolishly assumes the prince received a love confession from another woman. Robin the fairy cheerfully returns with the flower while Adelina desperately tries to rush back to the palace. Staring straight into her eyes, Prince Alexis fiercely declares that he loves only her. Still reeling from his heartfelt confession, Adelina joins Robin to eagerly mix ingredients in a tiny pot. Her eyes shimmer with unshed tears as she desperately wishes she could fully trust his romantic words. Deciding she needs a distraction from her cracking heart, she agrees to help brew the mysterious potion. The unlikely duo quietly descends into the gloomy, spiraling basement of the Fairy King's grand palace. Gripping a heavy wooden spoon, Adelina vigorously crushes the mystical ingredients inside a massive cauldron. She finds comfort in the distraction, playfully noting that she feels exactly like a wicked witch from a storybook. A massive explosion suddenly erupts from the cauldron, sending thick smoke billowing into the air. Robin cheers triumphantly at the pink smoke while Adelina stares blankly at the questionable brew. The cheerful fairy suggests inviting Prince Demetrius and Helena for a tea party to test their new creation. Adelina nervously hesitates to invite them out of the blue, but Robin insists the foreign prince will be thrilled. Remembering his desperate situation, Adelina thoughtfully agrees that Demetrius truly needs the magical medicine. Helena and Demetrius arrive at the peaceful pavilion, politely thanking their host for the sudden invitation. Adelina warmly offers them a special tea brewed from a rare fairy flower she found with Robin. A perfectly steeped cup of the mysterious magical tea is gently set before the royal couple. The dark liquid drips softly as the tiny fairy carefully finishes pouring the enchanting brew. Demetrius inhales the rich, earthy scent of the tea, visibly pleased by its wonderful aroma. Closing her eyes gracefully, Helena takes a delicate sip of the mystical fairy concoction. A sudden, violent thud shatters the peace as Demetrius collapses backward out of his chair. Adelina cries out in sheer panic, rushing forward to check on the fallen foreign prince. Demetrius gazes up at her in absolute awe, his cheeks flushed as he praises her wonderful, caring nature. He passionately calls her radiant and beautiful, leaving Adelina completely bewildered by his sudden romantic shift. Realizing their catastrophic mistake, a terrified Robin frantically screams at Adelina to run away. Helena watches in stunned horror as her fiancé shamelessly declares Adelina his ultimate goddess of love. Demetrius stares with undeniable obsession, his eyes practically shimmering with hearts as Adelina recoils in fear. Desperate to save her, Robin executes a flawless tablecloth flip to blind the enchanted prince. The tiny fairy violently yanks Adelina's hair, forcefully dragging the stunned princess away from the chaotic scene. Adelina sprints frantically through the gardens, desperately fleeing from the wildly infatuated Demetrius. Hiding in a dusty storage room, she breaks down in tears upon realizing the medicine was actually a potent love potion. Robin guiltily explains the potion binds the drinker to the first person they see, leaving Adelina sobbing over the disastrous mix-up. She dreads that Prince Alexis will definitely abandon her now that she accidentally ensnared a foreign royal. Robin casually drops the bombshell that the spell lasts 20 years, sending Adelina into an absolute panic for an antidote. While an obsessed Demetrius searches right outside their door, Adelina cowers inside and demands a cure. Determined to fix her colossal blunder, she orders Robin to scout ahead while she bravely hunts for the antidote recipe. Stepping into the courtyard with a bright smile, Demetrius formally requests Adelina to show herself. He passionately praises his hidden maiden, comparing her to a resilient flower and the shining stars of the night sky. Helena frantically begs Demetrius to come back to his senses, completely bewildered by his sudden and drastic change in behavior. Staring with an unnerving intensity, Demetrius bluntly states that she doesn't want to marry him and declares his absolute desire to be happy with Adelina. As Demetrius dramatically calls out for his beloved, a confused Helena mutters that Adelina should be happy with Prince Alexis. Silence falls over the grand, empty bedroom as the heavy curtains remain tightly drawn. Slumping onto the floor surrounded by open books, Adelina exhaustedly wonders how things ended up in such a disastrous state. She resolves to find a solution to the mess, kindly reminding herself that the young fairy Robin is not to blame. A sudden, sharp double knock at the door violently shatters the quiet atmosphere of the room. Startled by the unexpected noise, Adelina nervously calls out to ask if Prince Demetrius is waiting on the other side. Peeking cautiously from behind the curtains, she is shocked to hear Prince Alexis announce his late return. Alexis gently asks if she is okay, explaining that he heard she was sick and completely skipped dinner. Sneaking toward the door, Adelina nervously stammers that she was just going to rest while Alexis apologizes for waking her. Anxious not to disappoint him, she timidly asks if he enjoyed meeting his supposed acquaintance earlier that day. Alexis admits the meeting was incredibly tough, but notes that thinking about what would make Adelina happy made it thoroughly enjoyable. A genuinely warm smile spreads across his face as he assures her that it was a fun experience. Misinterpreting his joy, Adelina tragically assumes he received a confession from another woman and intends to abandon her. Clutching her chest in agony, she bitterly regrets falling in love with him because the emotional pain is simply too overwhelming. Tears stream down her face as she desperately wishes her feelings would vanish, while Alexis immediately senses her distress. Panicking at her sudden tears, Alexis urgently reaches out his hand to comfort his distressed wife. Adelina abruptly cuts him off, coldly declaring she doesn't want to hear his words before rushing out to clear her mind. The quiet night sky stretches infinitely beyond the elegant, stone arches of the palace corridors. Adelina wanders alone through the beautiful courtyard, approaching a majestic fountain sparkling under the moonlight. Hearing a sudden crack, she tearfully convinces herself to step aside and leave the role of his wife to someone more suited for him. She unleashes a terrified scream as the legendary King Oberon suddenly drops down from the ceiling right in front of her. The fairy king casually notes how unusual it is for her to be out so late, urging her to confess what is troubling her heavy heart. With a sly grin, Oberon accurately deduces that the foolish Alexis abandoned his wife to secretly meet another woman. Adelina stares at him in absolute disbelief, fiercely questioning if he is actually enjoying her heartbreaking situation. Oberon chuckles and tells her to stop crying, prompting Adelina to tearfully protest that her misery is nothing to laugh at. Taking pity on the suffering girl, the fairy king smoothly decides to present her with a very special gift. He leans in intimately close to her face, softly whispering that she is truly a fortunate maiden. Adelina wakes up groggily on her bedroom floor, completely disoriented and wondering when she actually fell asleep. A fairy excitedly announces they finally found the antidote recipe, prompting a relieved Adelina to agree to gather the ingredients tomorrow. Prince Alexis suddenly bursts into the room, leaving Adelina completely confused as to why tears are mysteriously streaming down her own face. Alexis frantically checks if she is all right, while Adelina blankly wonders what on earth the prince wants from her now. Expressing his profound relief that she returned safely to her room, he insists they must talk about what happened earlier. Adelina politely deflects his concern and asks to postpone the conversation until tomorrow, causing a deeply hurt Alexis to wince. She earnestly encourages him to do his absolute best to win over his true love, promising to wholeheartedly support both Helena and that fairy. Alexis freezes in his tracks, staring at his wife in utter shock as a single word of absolute disbelief escapes his lips. He fiercely commands the fairy to move aside so he can chase after Adelina, completely ignoring warnings that she needs her rest. A tiny fairy sternly announces King Oberon's royal decree, forbidding anyone from disturbing the resting Lady Adelina. Prince Alexis gasps in sudden shock as a blinding flash of magical light erupts beneath his feet. Caught completely off guard, the bewildered prince collapses heavily to the ground as the mysterious spell takes hold. Furious and disoriented, Alexis curses under his breath while realizing he was just forcefully teleported by fairy magic. Utterly confused by the chaotic situation, the prince questions the cryptic instruction to win his own wife over. A crushing wave of guilt hits him as he realizes he essentially kidnapped Adelina on their wedding day, fearing he only earned her hatred. King Oberon materializes with a mocking laugh, highly amused by the young prince's emotional immaturity and deep insecurities. The fairy king warns Alexis to speak his true feelings honestly before Adelina runs away, prompting the furious prince to violently grab him. Glaring fiercely at the meddlesome king, Alexis passionately vows that he will never let his precious bride slip away. Bursting with sudden determination, he declares that he will never let the wife he finally found escape his grasp. Wandering through the peaceful halls, Adelina pauses in sheer surprise as she hears her husband's distant, echoing voice. Adelina feels a sharp, sudden pang in her chest as she tries to recall the bizarre events surrounding Prince Demetrius and the fairy princess. Shaking off the painful memories, she stubbornly convinces herself to just demand a massive alimony and forget the whole ordeal entirely. She cheerfully focuses on building a bright, independent future, dreaming of a peaceful, slow life far away in the countryside. Riding proudly atop her fluffy alpaca, Adelina sets off with a basket full of mystical ingredients to brew the required antidote. Flying closely beside her, the tiny fairy Robin nervously questions if breaking the potion's spell will permanently ruin Demetrius's true romance. Adelina resolves to break the enchantment, firmly refusing to be dragged along by an artificial love that can never truly blossom. A sudden, overwhelming heaviness washes over Adelina's body, causing her to falter as an alarmed Robin calls out her name. Prince Demetrius suddenly bursts from the bushes with a terrifyingly cheerful greeting, causing Adelina to shriek in pure panic. Adelina desperately begs the fiercely enchanted prince to calm down, absolutely horrified by the overwhelming power of the fairy love potion. Completely consumed by artificial devotion, Demetrius passionately declares his eternal love and aggressively lunges toward the panicked princess. Prince Alexis violently intercepts the enchanted royal, his eyes blazing with absolute fury as he demands to know what Demetrius is doing. Adelina gasps in breathless shock as her fierce husband suddenly materializes to shield her from the obsessed foreign prince. Drawing his gleaming sword with lethal intent, Alexis fiercely declares that the woman Demetrius is shamelessly courting is his beloved wife. Adelina frantically begs her husband to lower his blade, terrified of sparking a war, but Alexis coldly commands her to stay quiet. Gripping her chest in confusion, Adelina desperately wonders why the prince would protect a mere fake wife as a glowing magic circle suddenly materializes on her body. Adelina cries out in sheer agony as she collapses toward the ground, prompting a horrified Alexis to drop his heavy sword. The chaotic spell suddenly breaks as a surprisingly lucid Demetrius turns to Helena, solemnly acknowledging that her heart belongs to another man. Staring deeply into his shocked fiancé's eyes, Demetrius passionately confesses that he has truly loved only her since their childhood days. He reveals the hidden depth of his devotion, gently explaining that his arranged engagement to her was actually his greatest dream come true. Overwhelmed by the stunning revelation, a tearful Helena realizes their feelings were mutual all along as she silently prays for his eternal happiness. Unable to process the emotional whiplash, a flustered Helena quietly turns on her heel and begins to walk away from the heartbreaking scene. Fighting through her agonizing pain, Adelina fiercely orders Demetrius not to let his true love walk away after finally revealing his heart. She desperately commands the stunned foreign prince to chase after Helena immediately, warning that letting her leave now will sever their bond forever. Demetrius snaps out of his daze and sprints desperately after his fleeing fiancée while a panicked Alexis catches Adelina's crumbling body. Bursting with newfound courage, Demetrius swiftly intercepts the tearful Helena and frantically blocks her path of escape. Completely freed from the fairy potion's lingering madness, Demetrius passionately embraces Helena and swears she is his one and only true love. Tears stream down Helena's flushed cheeks as she finally accepts his heartfelt confession, completely shattering the walls between them. An ominous, dark magical corruption violently erupts across Adelina's delicate skin, leaving Alexis completely paralyzed in sheer, unadulterated horror. King Oberon suddenly steps from the shadows with a grim expression, coldly warning the desperate prince that absolutely no mortal healer can save his dying wife. A fierce realization strikes as someone angrily declares that King Oberon is the true reason the girl is suffering. Flashing a wicked smirk, the fairy king arrogantly claims he simply bestowed his grand blessing upon her. Prince Alexis explodes in absolute fury, screaming that his supposed blessing is nothing but a cruel curse. Oberon smoothly deflects the prince's rage, shockingly revealing that the girl actually cast the curse upon herself. The fairy king explains she used magic to sever her memories of Alexis, a dangerous spell that would eventually destroy her own consciousness. Stumbling through the dark, Adelina desperately wishes she could erase her feelings entirely, convinced she is completely unfit to be a royal wife. Alexis fiercely vows never to give up on the wife he finally found, completely ignoring her pleas to stop worrying about a fake bride. Clutching her agonizingly painful chest, Adelina tearfully begs him to just live happily with the woman he truly loves. A worried fairy flutters anxiously around the fallen princess as her strength completely gives out. Lady Adelina collapses into the field, the dark magical crystal in her chest glowing ominously. As a tiny fairy cries for her to wake up, Alexis gently chides his beloved sleepyhead. Alexis passionately refuses to grant her tragic wish, fiercely declaring she is his one and only true wife. Pulling her lifeless form close, the desperate prince screams his love into the void and begs her to wake up. Leaning down to kiss her, Alexis stubbornly declares he will do whatever he wants because he loves her deeply. Basking in the beautiful starry sky, he gently reassures his bride that she never needs to force herself to be someone else. Tears stream down Adelina's face as she finally remembers everything, deeply regretting her doubts despite his earnest confession. She heartbrokenly asks if he will still accept her as his wife even after she doubted his true love. Alexis pulls her into a tight, desperate embrace, immensely relieved that she finally woke up from her magical slumber. Watching the touching reunion, Oberon warmly notes that true love was the only magic capable of breaking her self-imposed curse. Suddenly shifting the romantic mood entirely, Adelina bluntly brings up Alexis's supposed neglect and his suspicious trysts. She frantically accuses him of a secret rendezvous, while a panicking Alexis insists his explanatory letter must have gotten lost. Completely ignoring his frantic excuses, Adelina fiercely demands an explanation for his honeymoon meeting with a beautiful fairy woman. A regal voice suddenly interrupts the chaos, announcing the highly anticipated arrival of the supposed affair partner. Sweating bullets, Alexis frantically introduces the stunning newcomer as Queen Titania, desperately begging Adelina to clear up the massive misunderstanding. Queen Titania warmly introduces herself to the lovely princess, leaving Adelina completely paralyzed in utter bewilderment. The elegant fairy queen playfully dismisses the drama, teasingly noting that she must still have her charm if she was mistaken for a mistress. With the chaos finally settled, Alexis gently promises to take Adelina somewhere special once she has fully recovered. Several days later, a cheerful Robin bursts into the room, excitedly announcing that the grand surprise is finally ready to be revealed. Robin proudly presents a breathtaking, shimmering wedding dress flawlessly crafted by Queen Titania herself. Adelina gazes at the stunning gown with wide, tear-filled eyes, completely mesmerized by its ethereal beauty. The joyful fairies loudly proclaim that Prince Alexis and Lady Adelina's official wedding will take place tonight. A small fairy respectfully opens the grand doors, urging the beautifully dressed Lady Adelina to step forward. Walking in a daze, Adelina marvels at Titania's exquisite taste while struggling to process that she is actually marrying the prince again. Prince Alexis turns to greet his bride, looking breathtakingly handsome as he warmly praises her unparalleled beauty. Standing together under a sky filled with glowing lanterns, Alexis earnestly apologizes for keeping secrets and causing her so much worry. He gently explains that he needed time to prepare because he desperately wanted to replace their terrible first wedding with a perfect one. A fluffy alpaca and a fairy step forward, proudly presenting the stunned bride with a massive, vibrant bouquet. Adelina stares in shock at the legendary playful love flower crown, instantly recognizing the deep romantic meaning behind the red blooms. Titania fondly recalls how Alexis adorably asked her how to make the flower crown specifically for the girl he loves. Overwhelmed by immense embarrassment, Adelina internally screams that she wants to crawl into a hole, forever assuming her devoted prince was cheating. Staring deep into her eyes, Prince Alexis fiercely swears on his very existence to love and protect her. He gently reaches out his hand, asking if she will boldly walk the long road with him once more. Tears of joy prick Adelina's eyes as she passionately vows to continue loving him forever. The joyful fairies erupt into wild celebration, cheering loudly for the happy couple's beautiful second wedding. Realizing his true feelings still haven't reached her, Alexis fiercely resolves to make her understand exactly how much he loves her. He gently kisses her forehead, romantically dedicating the breathtaking night's moon entirely to his bride. A majestic fairy watches the tender moment, gracefully explaining that fairies express their profound love in exactly this way. Adelina blushes furiously, completely flustered after foolishly mistaking his sweet intent for a passionate kiss on the lips. Alexis pulls her close and presses a gentle, loving kiss to her hair as she melts into his embrace. Staring at his blushing bride, he boldly warns her to be prepared because he absolutely won't hold back his affections anymore. A breathtaking sea of glowing lanterns fills the sky while Adelina swoons over the spectacularly unfair surprise kiss. The royal newlyweds happily enjoy their peaceful honeymoon, enthusiastically hunting for fresh mushrooms together in the mystical woods. Adelina smiles radiantly, completely amazed that she actually gets to share such a wonderfully mundane moment with the busy prince. Alexis smoothly drops his playful facade, fiercely declaring he would much rather gaze at her beautiful face than look at mushrooms. He pins her with a hungry stare, teasingly threatening to devour his wildly adorable, flustered wife right there. The tiny fairy Robin suddenly shrieks in terror, frantically warning them about a highly dangerous mushroom that aggressively amplifies desire. Adelina trembles in sheer panic at the terrifying thought of actually getting eaten while Alexis leans in dangerously close. Despite the chaotic magical mishaps, their wildly fun honeymoon flashes by in the blink of an eye. Bidding farewell to the majestic fairy king, the royal couple finally concludes their magical vacation and returns to the human realm. Robin tags along for vital training in the human kingdom, nervously asking to sleep in Adelina's warm bed for comfort. Feeling deeply responsible for the tiny fairy's well-being, Adelina cheerfully agrees to let him stay close. Alexis instantly shuts the idea down, fiercely refusing to let another male share his wife's bed regardless of their tiny size. As their grand carriage approaches the detached palace, an overprotective Alexis absolutely forbids Robin from even sitting on Adelina's lap. Adelina gazes fondly out the carriage window, her heart swelling with immense warmth at the familiar, comforting sight. A massive, joyous crowd of palace staff eagerly welcomes their beloved lord and lady back to the estate. Alexis gently reassures a nervous Robin, fiercely vowing to ruthlessly punish anyone who dares look down on his tiny guest. Robin beams with absolute relief, completely won over by the imposing prince's surprisingly kind and protective nature. Looking at the genuinely smiling faces, Adelina deeply realizes this distant palace has truly become her precious home. Alexis gracefully accepts an invitation to her upcoming tea party, slyly setting the stage for his next romantic move. He leans in dangerously close and gently requests that she drop all royal honorifics and finally call him by his actual name. Adelina freezes in pure shock, suddenly realizing she has strictly called him Your Highness this entire time to protect her own heart. A crushing wave of guilt hits her as she remembers bitterly holding a grudge against him for getting her own name wrong. Smirking handsomely, Alexis declares he will eagerly look forward to hearing his true name spoken from her lips at the tea party. Clutching her dress in a wildly flustered panic, Adelina bravely accepts the daunting romantic challenge. During the tea party preparations, she aggressively whisks batter while desperately struggling to force his name past her trembling lips. Alexis suddenly pops into the kitchen, catching his troubled wife completely off guard as she awkwardly stammers his royal title. Lord Danforth casually pours tea and perceptively notes that the stubbornly proud prince simply felt terribly lonely without her. Danforth gently smiles and asks Adelina exactly how her heart felt the very first time the prince finally said her true name. A vivid memory flashes through her mind of Alexis desperately calling out Adelina with overwhelming raw emotion. Her eyes shimmer with unshed tears as she softly confesses that hearing him say her name made her overwhelmingly happy. A cheerful aide introduces a trio of fluffy hamsters named Framboise, Parfait, and Chocolate to an attentive Adelina. Adelina marvels at his ability to understand the tiny creatures, admitting she struggles to comprehend everything they squeak. The aide gently explains that a name carries deep feelings, ensuring that the receiver always responds when called. He warmly describes the intimate act of calling someone's name as a powerful magic word. Encouraged by his profound wisdom, Adelina fiercely vows to do her absolute best for the prince she loves. Prince Alexis stands tall and elegant, proudly announcing that he has been eagerly looking forward to this moment with his wife. Adelina hypes herself up, clutching her chest as she prepares to finally speak the prince's name aloud. Overwhelmed by nerves, she clumsily blurts out a stuttered greeting to her deeply beloved husband. Panic instantly washes over her face as she realizes she completely ruined the most important part of his name. She silently screams in frustration over her failed practice run, while Alexis smoothly invites her to start their tea party normally. The peaceful atmosphere abruptly shatters when a mischievous knight sneaks a bite of the treats, sparking a comical scuffle. An older gentleman checks on the visibly flustered Adelina, prompting her to awkwardly blame the herbal tea for her strange behavior. Seizing an opportunity, 3 loyal aides smoothly surround the princess and desperately ask for a private moment. Acknowledging her agonizing struggle with the prince's formal name, they eagerly offer their assistance to help her succeed. Curious, Adelina asks if they ever use his actual name, leading one knight to admit he usually sticks to formal titles out of pure laziness. Gordon proudly reveals he used to drop the honorifics entirely during their childhood, a nostalgic habit he occasionally slips back into. He warmly assures her that the prince never found it disrespectful and actually seemed genuinely delighted by the striking familiarity. Back at the table, Adelina nervously offers a steaming cup of apricot tea to her quietly waiting husband. A heavy, suffocating silence settles between the royal couple as they sip their tea under the watchful eyes of their guards. Summoning every ounce of her courage, Adelina mentally prepares for a second attempt but only manages to aggressively stutter. Desperate to deflect from her monumental failure, she wildly points out a random, waddling dodo bird strolling through the garden. Alexis gently advises her not to force herself, leaving a devastated Adelina to silently curse her own utter uselessness. Misinterpreting her deep distress, Alexis solemnly apologizes for constantly causing her trouble with extravagant gifts like an incredibly expensive tiara. He bitterly regrets trying to blindly buy her happiness with grand gestures like building a zoo, realizing he completely failed to consider her true feelings. Adelina vehemently denies his self-deprecating claims, instead shyly requesting a long horseback ride together as her genuine wish. She reflects on his undeniable devotion, recalling how he forcefully shattered her defensive magic with his unwavering words of love. Gripping her dress tightly, she concludes that it is absolutely imperative for her to finally call his name in return. Staring into his waiting eyes, she fiercely commands herself to be brave as he gently prompts her. With a deep breath and a heavily flushed face, she finally calls out to him using a highly affectionate nickname. Alexis freezes with a deeply flushed face, while Adelina internally praises Gordon for suggesting a much easier, shorter moniker. Her momentary triumph violently crashes as she suddenly fears she completely overstepped her boundaries with the overly familiar name. She visibly trembles in sheer terror, completely convinced that the prince's intense, looming silence means he is absolutely furious. Breaking the suffocating tension, Alexis softly calls her name while leaning intimately closer. With intense, pleading eyes, he urgently begs his flustered wife to call him by his nickname just one more time. Alexis aggressively demands to hear it again with a furiously blushing face, while Adelina screams that she cannot endure any more embarrassment. Softening his intense demeanor, he apologizes and tenderly admits that hearing his beloved call his name brings him unimaginable happiness. Adelina suddenly spots their loyal aides cheering in the background, freezing in sheer horror at the realization of their heavily public display. Completely ignoring the captive audience, Alexis smoothly offers a sweet bite of cake to his paralyzed bride. A deeply mortified Adelina stammers a weak protest, acutely aware of the many eyes glued directly to their intimate moment. Flashing a wickedly handsome smirk, Alexis boldly declares that they should give their eager audience a proper, unforgettable show. Enjoying a slice of delicious strawberry cake, Adelina melancholically reflects on how an ordinary girl like her ended up as a royal princess. She admits feeling entirely out of place in the grand palace, but fiercely resolves to stand strong by the prince's side. Staring with gentle determination, she vows to overcome any difficulty as long as the prince wishes it. She muses about the classic fairy tale where Cinderella's stepsister somehow ends up marrying the beautiful prince. Cradling her fluffy alpaca while reading a book, she wonders if the side character's true love will actually guarantee a happily ever after. Her peaceful reading is suddenly interrupted by Prince Alexis, completely shattering the illusion of her perfect storybook ending. Startled, Adelina explains to the prince that she genuinely wants to learn how to wield magic properly. She nervously admits her desire to control her mana after unconsciously using magic back in the fairy realm. Blushing furiously as the prince leans in close, she stammers about reading magic books just to study. Alexis happily promises to make immediate arrangements for her to visit the prestigious Mage's Tower to receive expert instruction. Adelina blushes deeply as the prince gently takes her hands in his to reassure her. Unable to accompany her due to official duties, he strictly instructs her to bring Lord Danforth to protect her from the eccentric mages. Adelina shrieks in absolute flustered panic as the prince unexpectedly presses a sweet kiss to the back of her hand. Alexis shamelessly declares her cute while Adelina desperately whines about his overwhelming overprotectiveness. Arriving at the towering, ominous Mage's Tower, Adelina and Lord Danforth note the uniquely creepy atmosphere surrounding the facility. A tiny robin the fairy puffs out his chest, confidently swearing to blast away any bad guys hiding in the dark woods. Bursting through the doors, the mages immediately swarm Adelina with sparkling eyes, frantically begging for the famous princess's autograph. Adelina beams with a radiant smile, politely thanking the enthusiastic scholars for all their hard work. Escorted by an old, bearded mage, she breathes a sigh of relief that the supposedly odd mages are actually quite friendly. Seated in a grand study, she earnestly asks the senior scholars to instruct her on how to handle her magical abilities. The head mage bluntly refuses her request, prompting a confused Adelina to ask about the difference between a mage and a wizard. The old man passionately explains that true wizards wield incomprehensible power, making it entirely impossible for mere mages to teach her anything. A grueling hour later, an exhausted Adelina and Danforth desperately try to escape the endless, rambling magical lecture. The creepy mages suddenly demand custody of her fairy and a sample of her blood, completely terrifying the fleeing princess. Danforth expertly deflects the insane requests, smoothly using her busy schedule as an excuse to pull her out of the room. Sprinting away from the terrifying castle, Adelina fiercely warns Robin never to wander near the obsessive mages alone. 3 days later, a luxurious royal carriage sits waiting outside the grand estate to transport the prince. Adelina solemnly stands before Alexis, praying for his safe journey as he departs for an important international conference. Pulling her into a tight embrace, a deeply reluctant Alexis kisses her forehead and complains about leaving his worried wife behind. Adelina blushes heavily and softly promises to wait for his return, ignoring the surrounding knights while whispering his name. Gordon finally snaps, loudly yelling at the love-struck idiot to cut out the endless romantic farewells and get in the carriage. Staring intensely at Adelina, Alexis promises to return quickly and vows to somehow contact a real wizard to help her. Adelina waves him off with a bright smile, cheerfully encouraging him to do his absolute best at work while she guards the estate. Inside the rattling carriage, a furious Alexis rapidly scribbles a letter to a wizard, demanding they protect his beloved bride. Gordon sighs heavily, pointing out that the prince worries entirely too much considering he doesn't even know where the wizard Matoha is. The knight's expression darkens as he admits that many dangerous people secretly resent Adelina's position as the crown prince's fiancée. He grimly warns that hidden enemies might use the prince's absence as the perfect opportunity to strike at her. Alexis reaches for his freshly written letter to prove his plan, only to freeze in sheer confusion when his hands meet empty air. A sudden gust of wind violently yanks the sealed envelope out of the carriage window, sending it dancing into the air. The prince stares in absolute disbelief as his crucial letter flutters helplessly away into the windy sky. A sudden, blinding flash of light erupts as someone reacts in utter shock to an intense display of magic. Meanwhile, a violent and sudden storm strikes the detached palace as a frantic maid rushes to Lady Adelina's side. The breathless maid announces that a servant in direct service to Her Majesty the Queen has unexpectedly arrived. Adelina gasps in pure disbelief, completely stunned that someone from the Queen's retinue has come to visit her. A regal maid steps forward to explain that the traveling Queen has sent her to discuss an important matter of work. The servant respectfully asks if Adelina will take over the royal family's annual charity party for the orphanage children. Adelina breaks into a heavy cold sweat, completely overwhelmed by the daunting prospect of taking on official royal duties. Her loyal aides nervously recall that this massive charitable activity was previously handled flawlessly by Princess Sylvia. They remember Princess Sylvia as an astonishingly wise and beautiful noble who left the palace to marry a border count. Feeling entirely inadequate, Adelina silently panics that taking over such a perfect predecessor's role is far too much for her. Realizing a cowardly refusal would permanently label her unfit to be the crown princess, she desperately forces a polite smile. Bowing her head gracefully, Adelina accepts the immense request and fiercely resolves to do her absolute best as the prince's wife. Her maids proudly praise her composed smile, completely unaware that Adelina's cheeks are violently twitching from the intense stress. The queen's servant promises to immediately arrange highly capable assistants to support the princess in orchestrating a wonderful party. Adelina's loyal maids enthusiastically cheer her on, eager to help their beloved lady conquer her very first official duty. Petting her fluffy alpaca, Adelina mentally prepares to put her magic studies on hold to completely focus on the children. A sharp, intimidating voice suddenly interrupts the peaceful field, aggressively demanding to know Lady Adelina's exact whereabouts. The stern woman marches up to the group, boldly announcing that she has been officially ordered by the queen to assist. Fixing her glasses with a fiercely critical glare, the imposing woman formally introduces herself as Countess Amanda. Adelina politely introduces herself in return, warmly welcoming the formidable countess to the sprawling detached palace. Countess Amanda instantly recoils in absolute disgust, loudly scolding the princess for her shockingly shabby and dirty appearance. Blushing in pure embarrassment, Adelina apologizes for her messy attire while the maids nervously wonder why a countess arrived instead of a viscountess. Amanda bluntly explains she stepped in because the original appointee fell ill, casting a strict and unyielding aura over the group. Taking a seat at the grand table, the countess instantly seizes control and begins presenting her extremely strict party draft. She coldly dictates the official menu, proudly announcing that the main dish will be a traditional fish pie. For entertainment, Amanda rigidly plans a highly educational and thoroughly dry reading of the nation's long history. Adelina hesitantly interrupts the presentation, nervously pointing out that the children might find such a rigid program incredibly dull. Amanda glares fiercely at the trembling princess, warning her that any foolish mistakes will directly tarnish Prince Alexis's pristine reputation. The countess brutally orders Adelina to refrain from careless remarks, sharply criticizing her complete unfamiliarity with high court etiquette. Crushed by the heavy pressure, Adelina quietly submits because she is absolutely terrified of causing any criticism to fall upon her prince. Amanda strictly commands the princess to sample the food, proudly revealing she already ordered the chefs to prepare the full menu. A grand silver cloche is dramatically lifted, revealing the nation's highly esteemed traditional dish to the entire table. Adelina stares in utter shock and horror at the nightmare-inducing stargazy pie sitting directly in front of her. A tiny fairy shrieks in sheer terror at the baked fish heads, while Adelina violently questions if they seriously plan to serve this to children. Amanda explodes in self-righteous fury, loudly accusing the horrified princess of disrespecting their sacred national traditions. The countess brutally berates the princess, claiming her isolated freedom has left her entirely lacking in proper royal awareness. Crossing her arms arrogantly, Amanda boldly challenges the princess to officially dismiss her if she dares to disagree with the plan. Adelina panics internally, acutely aware that firing the queen's appointed assistant would utterly destroy the royal family's credibility. The narrator reflects that unlike simple fairy tales, marrying a royal prince actually brings endless and agonizing real-world hardships. Adelina's loyal maids and fairy friends desperately try to cheer her up, urging her to just ignore the incredibly mean old countess. Strolling outside, Adelina spots a massive bird in the sky while questioning her own lack of princess-like awareness. Robin frantically warns her to watch out as the supposed bird suddenly plummets toward the ground. A mysterious figure crashes violently into the bushes as someone yells for Adelina to step back. Royal guards instantly charge forward with spears raised, screaming to seize the fallen intruder. The battered stranger groans in pain amidst the crushed leaves, visibly relieved to have survived the massive fall. Frantically waving a sealed envelope in the air, he desperately begs the guards to realize he is not a suspicious person. The stranger introduces himself as Hubert, revealing he is actually a wizard summoned by Prince Alexis to assist Adelina. Adelina stares at him in sheer bewilderment, wondering why every magic user she meets acts like a complete weirdo. As the fierce guards surround the fallen wizard, a concerned Adelina kindly introduces herself and asks if he is hurt. Hubert calmly brushes off the crash and confidently addresses her, confirming he already knows exactly who she is. Adelina marvels at the sheer mystery of magic users, utterly baffled by how he managed to fly in the first place. Her eyes widen as she spots the official royal crest engraved on his letter, confirming it isn't a forgery. Hubert suddenly presents a grand portrait of a young boy, explaining it was painted for the prince's 10th birthday. Gazing at the boy's sullen expression, Adelina wonders if the endless stream of royal portraits simply made him nervous. Without warning, Hubert grabs Adelina and gleefully announces they are going to crash straight into the painting. A blinding explosion of magical light erupts as they violently cross the threshold into the painted canvas. Holding her securely, Hubert calmly asks a deeply disoriented Adelina if she is all right after the magical jump. Blushing furiously, Adelina stammers a panicked apology, utterly mortified that she accidentally clung tightly to a strange man. Gazing at the lavish crystal chandeliers, she quickly realizes they have arrived inside the main palace instead of her detached estate. Young Prince Alexis suddenly appears in the hallway, his eyes widening in shock as Hubert casually greets him. Hubert cheerfully wishes the stunned prince a happy birthday while Alexis questions his unexpected arrival. The young boy forces a painful, hollow smile, hiding his deep misery about a birthday celebration he secretly dreads. The young prince turns his confused gaze toward Adelina, prompting Hubert to quickly realize something is slightly off. Sensing her imminent panic, Hubert silently prays Adelina doesn't blurt out something completely disastrous to the boy. Desperate to hide her identity, Adelina frantically lies, claiming to be a massive fan who applied as a royal maid. Hubert plays along smoothly, ordering her to the maid's quarters while reminding the boy that a prince must be beloved by his people. Once safely out of sight, an exhausted Adelina collapses heavily to the floor, completely drained by the nerve-wracking encounter. Hubert scolds her for the reckless lie, but she fiercely argues that revealing she is his future bride would shatter his reality. Staring up at the towering painted castle, they confirm they have arrived exactly 3 days before the prince's 10th birthday. Adelina's eyes widen in sheer realization as the profound truth of their incredible magical situation finally sinks in. Understanding exactly why the prince looked so miserable in his portrait, Hubert cheerfully suggests they throw him a genuinely fun birthday party. Hubert eagerly presents a classic maid outfit, urging Adelina to put it on to flawlessly complete her new disguise. Now dressed as a charming maid, Adelina nervously peeks into the grand study to greet the hardworking young prince. The boy grants her entry while Hubert announces their plans for a small party, completely ignoring the tutor's complaints about interrupting lessons. Adelina formally apologizes for interrupting the session, her sudden appearance confusing the young prince's study companions. She steps forward with gentle elegance, bowing slightly as she presents the handcrafted invitation directly to the young prince. Looking deeply into his eyes, she earnestly promises to do her absolute utmost to host him well and warmly asks him to attend. Hubert flashes a knowing smile, cheerfully telling the stunned boy they will be eagerly waiting for him. The prince's young companions marvel at the elegant penmanship on the invitation, eagerly asking if he plans to go. A flustered tutor desperately demands quiet to resume their lessons, entirely unaware that their surreal reality exists inside a painted world. Two disguised figures smoothly secure a secret key to use the detached palace as a birthday venue. They eagerly plan to ensure Prince Alexis spends his 10th birthday with a joyful smile. Preparations instantly kick off in the rustic kitchen to celebrate the young prince's special day. Utilizing magic to blend in as familiar servants, the group freely sneaks out massive amounts of ingredients. They cheerfully praise each other's rapid disguise and gathering skills. On the highly anticipated day of the prince's birthday, an eager Hubert bursts in to check on the cooking progress. He enthusiastically suggests they start whipping up some trial dishes immediately. Adelina stares exhaustedly at the massive pile of unprepared ingredients scattered across the kitchen. Completely overwhelmed, she tearfully realizes nothing is turning out right without the constant help she usually receives at the detached palace. Crushed by her own helplessness, Adelina sobs that she won't be able to make the prince happy at this disastrous rate. A gentle voice firmly encourages her to stop crying and trust that her earnest feelings will surely reach him. Wiping her tears, Adelina passionately declares her desire for her feelings to reach Alexis and everyone else who supports her. Suddenly, a brilliant flash of magic sparks as heavy kitchen knives and whisks miraculously levitate into the air. To Adelina's absolute shock, the ladles forcefully begin stirring the massive pots entirely on their own. Hubert enthusiastically cheers as the magical kitchen rapidly whips the ingredients into shape. A flurry of enchanted utensils vigorously chop, whisk, and prepare the grand feast around the bewildered princess. Hubert slyly deflects when asked if the magic is his, playfully noting that the stalled dishes are finishing perfectly one after another. The doors swing open to reveal a 10-year-old Prince Alexis, who haughtily announces his attendance simply because a prince must be loved by his people. Hubert cheerfully welcomes the young royal, openly teasing the incredibly adorable pout on the boy's face. A spectacular spread is presented, featuring red wine-braised beef without carrots, a 4-cheese spinach quiche, and vibrant ratatouille. Seated at the grand table, the young prince marvels at the highly unusual but incredibly appetizing array of dishes. Amazed by the delicious flavors, the young Alexis boldly offers to officially appoint her as his personal chef. Deeply flustered by the massive honor, Adelina stammers that the day they truly meet is still far in the future. Hubert enthusiastically announces that he also has a special birthday present for the young prince. Pointing dramatically at the stunned maid, Hubert proudly declares that his grand present is her. Adelina freezes in pure bewilderment while the young prince coughs awkwardly, scolding Hubert for being the only one taking things easy. Extending a small, elegant hand, the young prince graciously offers to indulge his flustered chef in a single dance. He smoothly insists on rewarding her unwavering loyalty since the birthday feast was truly splendid. Overwhelmed by profound emotion, Adelina tearfully accepts the immense honor, realizing she may never get the chance to dance with a 10-year-old Alexis again. As they waltz across the floor, the young prince smoothly praises her surprisingly excellent dancing skills. Beaming with joy, Adelina cheerfully admits she practiced relentlessly so she could dance perfectly with him when he turns 20. Gazing up at her, the young prince softly confesses that he was completely fed up with the entire birthday celebration before arriving. Flashing a genuinely radiant smile, he warmly thanks her and admits that birthdays aren't so bad after all. Adelina's eyes widen as her heart entirely melts at the sight of the young prince's beautifully innocent expression. The narrator notes that his precious smile is more than enough reward for her as they continue their enchanting dance. Suddenly shifting the atmosphere, Hubert slyly asks Adelina how she enjoyed the magical world inside the painting. Snapping back to reality, an invigorated Adelina vows to use her refreshed spirit to do her absolute best for the upcoming orphanage party. Hubert casually drops a terrifying bombshell, noting that time passes at the exact same rate outside the magical painting. Adelina turns completely pale, her eyes widening in sheer horror as she realizes she has been missing for 3 whole days right before the major event. Bursting with renewed determination, Adelina fiercely declares that making people happy matters far more than empty form and tradition as she rushes to prepare. She firmly asks a silent listener if they understand her absolute resolve. The memory of her beloved prince's gentle smile fuels her burning desire to succeed. Storming back to the grand estate, Adelina loudly and confidently calls out for Lady Amanda. Staring down the utterly shocked countess, Adelina fiercely demands that the strict old woman immediately withdraw from assisting with the party. Adelina firmly agrees to the plan while a shocked older woman demands to know if she is in her right mind. Overwhelmed to be back, Adelina reflects on everything that happened inside the painting while Hubert cheerfully greets her. Hubert praises her success, explaining they managed to hold the line against the impatient lady pushing the party plan. Announcing she can return, Hubert casually pulls a shrieking Adelina back through the magical mirror. Hubert explains that her mirror reflection filled in while she was away, leaving Adelina deeply confused. Realizing Hubert's magic stopped Lady Amanda's plans, Adelina resolves to stop being led around and vows to prepare a party that will make the children happy. Furious at this defiance, Lady Amanda accuses Adelina of tarnishing the royal family's prestige by ignoring tradition. Ignoring the older woman's warnings, Adelina boldly declares she will take full responsibility for her actions. Sweating nervously, Adelina internally panics over her own audacity while her supporters praise her magnificent stance. Acknowledging there is no turning back, Adelina and her loyal staff vow to give the party everything they have to avoid being at the mercy of the mean old lady. The much-anticipated day of the charity party finally arrives at the grand estate. Relieved that her worries were unfounded, Adelina happily introduces the orphanage children to an adorable alpaca and tiny sheep. Wondering where Hubert ran off to, Adelina smiles as the children excitedly chase a real fairy around the highly successful event. An enraged Lady Amanda storms onto the grounds, viciously labeling the party vulgar for letting children touch the animals. Adelina calmly defends updating traditions to delight the children, but Lady Amanda furiously brings up her previous earnest warnings. Glaring at the young consort, Lady Amanda threatens to make a full report about Adelina trampling royal traditions so brazenly. A dignified, unseen voice suddenly interrupts the heated argument to announce that there is no need for such a report. Princess Sylvia elegantly steps into view, greeting the stunned crowd and asking if everyone has been well. The narrative identifies this striking woman as His Majesty's younger sister, the Margravine, noting she shares Prince Alexis's silver blonde hair and cool gaze. Adelina stares in shock, realizing this royal figure is the previous lead for this very charity party. Lady Amanda eagerly complains to the princess, accusing Adelina of acting selfishly and dragging the royal name through the mud. Unfazed, Princess Sylvia stares down the older woman and coldly notes that Lady Amanda has certainly done as she pleased. Closing her eyes in deep shame, Adelina apologizes for being an inadequate consort and silently prepares to be reprimanded. A sudden sharp shout of her name makes Adelina flinch backward in surprise. Prince Alexis unexpectedly arrives on the scene, gently catching his wife before she loses her balance. The onlookers stammer in utter disbelief, shocked that His Highness returned so much earlier than scheduled. Glaring fiercely, Alexis coldly informs Lady Amanda that he heard she has been very attentive toward his wife. Princess Sylvia curtly orders Alexis not to barge in and interrupt her judgment. Sparks flying between the royal siblings, Alexis firmly declares he won't allow anyone to pass judgment on his consort. Lady Amanda triumphantly urges the princess to punish Adelina, smugly reminding everyone that Sylvia formerly oversaw this party. Sylvia turns her icy gaze onto the older woman, flatly stating that Lady Amanda is the one who will be punished. Lady Amanda stammers in sheer terror and confusion, completely unable to process what the princess is saying. Alexis presents a document to the crowd, revealing a reliable source sent him the project plan Lady Amanda tried forcing onto Adelina. Examining the papers, Sylvia notes the awful draft is from decades ago, confirming this was the outdated plan Lady Amanda pushed. Feigning respect for her devotion to the old ways, Alexis officially banishes a horrified Lady Amanda to the royal archives. Refusing to accept her dreary banishment, Lady Amanda frantically screams that Adelina is a low-born, base witch. A royal guard immediately steps in, aggressively silencing the frantic woman by declaring that any further insults will not be tolerated. The guard finishes his strict warning, stating such vile behavior will be regarded as a direct attack on Her Highness. With the incident resolved, the other nobles casually remark on how uncivilized the older woman's outburst was in front of the children. While Alexis remains protectively by her side, Adelina spots Hubert casually waving in the distance and demands to know where he has been. As everyone's stomachs loudly rumble, Hubert cheerfully suggests they continue the party since everyone seems hungry. Apologizing for the delay, Adelina excitedly invites everyone, including Prince Alexis and Lady Sylvia, to join them and eat. Realizing the connection, Adelina turns to Hubert and asks if he was the one who told His Highness and Lady Sylvia about her. Sylvia confirms the suspicion, admitting that Hubert's habit of appearing suddenly always startles her. Pondering Hubert's incredible abilities that bypass time and distance, Alexis deduces that Lady Amanda must have threatened the Viscountess originally meant to assist Adelina. Alexis fiercely promises to erase anyone who tries to harm Adelina, prompting Sylvia to share how her status as a witch consort causes severe backlash and insults. Acknowledging that people will continuously try to drag her down with harsh prejudice, Sylvia finds comfort in the fact that ordinary people do not share that cruelty. Staring solemnly across the table, Sylvia earnestly asks Alexis if she can still keep being the crown princess despite her precarious position. Alexis coldly reminds the group that consort Adelina's position is highly precarious, sharply telling Sylvia to be quiet when she attempts to intervene. With a determined glint in her eye, Sylvia firmly states that she is a witch possessing magical power. Gripping her dress tightly, Sylvia acknowledges that many must fear her since witches are depicted as villains even in fairy tales, a burden Alexis quietly understands. Looking forward with unwavering resolve, she declares her earnest wish to remain at Prince Alexis's side as his consort. Standing with regal grace, Sylvia's quiet strength prompts Alexis to solemnly call out Adelina's name. A soft gaze watches the scene unfold, noting that this resilience is exactly expected of the bride Alexis chose. A majestic figure materializes, expressing a sincere hope that Adelina will become a good witch. Meanwhile, Adelina stands quietly outside near a parked carriage beneath the evening sky. Something suddenly catches her attention, making her glance upward in surprise. Holding an umbrella, Hubert casually announces he is setting out to travel again because the wind changed, prompting a panicked Adelina to protest that he hasn't taught her any magic yet. Leaning in close with a playful smirk, Hubert smoothly asks if she will come with him. He promises to raise her into a fine magic user as they travel the world, offering to show her scenery more dazzling than a jewelry box. Holding out his hand invitingly, he asks what she thinks of his grand proposal. With a playful tap to her forehead, Hubert reveals he is just kidding and simply explains that magic is performed by strongly wishing for something to happen. Emphasizing that the reason and the person you use magic for is what truly matters, Hubert promises to return when the wind changes again. Stepping out into the garden, Alexis apologizes for not being much help and notices that the elusive Hubert has already vanished. Alexis praises her cooking as delicious even without magic, inspiring Adelina to work hard to control her unconscious abilities so she might use them to enhance her meals. Alexis notices an injured sheep named Pecorina and proudly reminds Adelina that he is her personal chef after all. Gently tending to the crying animal, Adelina channels Hubert's advice and focuses her thoughts on wishing the pain away. Concentrating her newfound power, she commands the lingering pain to fly away. The little sheep instantly stands back up on its feet, completely healed and staring up at her with adoration. Cradling the precious animal against her cheek, Adelina happily wonders if her magic actually worked a little. Resolving to become a kind witch who protects everyone's smiles, she gently warns the confused sheep that it still needs absolute rest until a proper vet checks it. Meanwhile, gossiping voices echo through a grand estate as people eagerly discuss a captivating new rumor. A group of ladies excitedly chat about the tale of a sky-sailing pirate ship, swooning over the rumor that its captain is an absolute dreamboat. According to a recent report, this mysterious flying ship has miraculously been sighted in countries all over the world. A massive airborne pirate galleon bursts through the clouds, boldly heading straight toward the eastern land of glory. One noblewoman enthusiastically fantasizes about being kidnapped by the dashing captain, imagining him declaring that she is the treasure he will steal tonight. The scene shifts to a pair of gloved hands, silently reading a newspaper article detailing these exact airborne exploits. A handsome pirate captain smirks confidently and demands to know who they think he is, completely unfazed as a crewmate playfully mentions someone has stolen his beloved. Reclining comfortably beneath his crossbones flag, the captain boldly declares that whenever there is prey he wants, he simply goes and takes it. Leaves scatter in the wind around a majestic cathedral, setting the stage for the tale of the princess rescued from the flying pirate ship. A man remarks that everything is settled now that they've spotted the pirate ship nearby, but a woman worries about the kidnapped crown princess of the Miracle Kingdom. Someone frantically rustles through the bushes, refusing to believe the pirates took her and insisting the story doesn't end like this. Knowing they can't quietly slip back after causing a massive scene, the prince suggests they put on a little show. The elegantly dressed couple steps out of hiding and prepares to make a grand entrance at the banquet. Startled guests gasp and point toward the sky as someone urgently tells everyone to look up. Making a dramatic entrance, the prince casually asks the stunned crowd how they enjoyed the performance. Riding a majestic white-winged horse, the prince and princess Adelina gracefully descend toward the cheering onlookers. The narrator frames the entire chaotic event as a grand tale of a princess kidnapped by pirates. The prince playfully asks the crowd if they enjoyed the theatrical story of her rescue by a knight on a white horse. The confused nobles wonder if the flying pirates really cooperated just for an act, but ultimately express immense relief that the royal couple is safe. Sweating nervously, Adelina silently reflects that turning the real kidnapping into a theatrical performance was a bit too much. Apologizing for the magical disturbance, the prince gracefully urges everyone to push through the shock and continue the wedding celebration. The massive flying pirate ship slowly drifts through the star-studded sky above the awestruck banquet guests. Enchanted by the glowing lights, the wedding guests marvel at the flying pirate ship as it supposedly blesses Prince Demetrius' marriage. A noblewoman cheerfully praises Princess Adelina for arranging such a wonderfully elaborate display. Smiling down from the helm of his flying ship, the pirate captain silently accepts the royal gratitude. The crowd cheerfully returns to celebrating Prince Demetrius and Princess Helena as they prepare to set sail. The prince closes his eyes with deep relief, silently thankful that everything worked out in the end. Adelina bows deeply before the newlywed royal couple, offering her most sincere and desperate apologies. Prince Demetrius warmly insists there is no need to apologize, expressing profound gladness that she is completely safe. Observing that the gentlemen have reached an agreement, the prince asks if they can let the whole incident go since the pirate matter was his responsibility. The foreign prince expresses his deep relief, thanking his counterpart for preserving the peace between their nations. Escorted by her prince, Adelina walks quietly through the grand halls of the palace as they finally take their leave. Noticing his severely flushed face, Adelina worries about the prince and decides she must formally apologize for causing him so much trouble. In a sudden panic, Adelina flusters over the thought of a kiss while the prince softly murmurs her name. Without warning, the prince violently staggers forward and collapses directly into a deeply shocked Adelina. Gasping for air, the prince weakly reveals his body feels like it is on fire before completely passing out. Panicking, Adelina desperately screams for Lord Danforth and Lord Gordon to help the fallen prince. The prince lies unconscious in bed while a nearby aide reassures Adelina that the court physician diagnosed it as severe exhaustion. Refusing to believe it's just exhaustion, Adelina argues that defeating a whole pirate crew alone is practically impossible for a normal person. The aide softly explains that royalty are special beings granted many blessings, warning her that this secret must never be shared. He reveals that while these blessings grant power far beyond human limits, the resulting physical backlash is incredibly severe. Horrified, Adelina realizes the prince used his blessing's power to rescue her, risking a backlash that could potentially be fatal. Gripping his hands in despair, Adelina tearfully blames herself for pushing the prince to the point of collapse. The exhausted prince rests silently in his lavish bed, his face pale and drawn. Bursting into the room, a frantic aide announces the prince has woken up and immediately asked for Adelina. Growling in a delirious fever, the disoriented prince desperately asks if the pirates took her away again. Tossing aside his covers in a blind panic, the prince ignores the aide's pleas to calm down and aggressively demands they return his Adelina. Adelina suddenly bursts through the heavy wooden doors, wearing a maid's outfit and shouting to ask if he is all right. Recovering her composure, Adelina nervously explains she was making recovery food, which Lord Danforth smoothly hands to her from behind. Excusing themselves from the room, the group leaves Gordon behind to whine about the unfair lack of pity he is receiving. A steaming bowl of egg lemon soup is presented, showcasing a traditional dish from the glorious kingdom. Someone warmly praises Adelina's ever-growing cooking repertoire, noting she learned this new recipe directly from the palace kitchen. Alexis clatters his spoon against the bowl, frustrated that his recovering body still refuses to move properly. Gently stepping in, Adelina offers to help feed him and sweetly asks the prince to open his mouth. Alexis happily agrees without hesitation as Adelina carefully brings a spoonful of the warm broth to his lips. Savoring the light and comforting flavor, Alexis smiles and declares the soup to be absolutely delicious. Shifting the conversation, Alexis turns his focus to Adelina and earnestly asks how she is feeling now. He gazes at her with deep affection, immensely relieved to see that she is finally safe. Adelina stares back in quiet shock, internally wondering why he always worries about her more than himself. Remembering she used her blessing to save him, Alexis apologizes and anxiously asks if something happened to her. The prince passionately begs her never to do anything reckless again, reminding her just how deeply he cares for her. Declaring he would gladly give his own heart for her, Alexis insists that losing her would be his greatest tragedy. Overwhelmed by self-doubt, Adelina reflects on her sister's radiant beauty and feels she lacks any true worth. She softly confesses that living in their shadows makes being chosen by him feel like an impossible dream. Misinterpreting her hesitation, Alexis braces himself in sudden fear that she is trying to break up with him. Blushing deeply, Adelina instantly corrects him and vows to work hard to become a princess truly worthy of his love. Stepping closer with unwavering resolve, she earnestly asks to support him and stay by his side forever. Pulling her into a tight embrace, Alexis playfully admits his own jealousy and his tendency to go completely overboard. Gripped by sudden envy, Alexis demands to know the exact nature of her relationship with that overly attached pirate. Flustered by the accusation, Adelina insists she only saw him as an acquaintance and remained completely oblivious to his flirting. Alexis stares intently at her, quietly wondering how things might have played out under different circumstances. He muses aloud that if Haim had confessed his feelings before they met, she might have actually returned them. Brushing off the what-ifs, Adelina reassures him that despite their many detours, her rightful place is now at his side. Unconvinced and seeking more reassurance, Alexis quickly moves in with a mischievous glint in his eye. He steals a sudden kiss, jealously demanding to know if the pirate ever dared to do something like this to her. As Adelina frantically denies it, Alexis smoothly suggests trying it out a few more times just to jog her memory. Adelina shrieks in embarrassment as the relentless prince utterly refuses to drop the subject. For a long while, Adelina finds herself completely trapped at the mercy of his sweet and overwhelming interrogation. The scene shifts to a serene coastal view, where the calming sound of the sea mingles with the bleating of sheep. Enjoying the peaceful remainder of their stay, the group casually discusses their country officially taking in the Pegasus. Amidst the cheerful banter, someone jokingly accuses Adelina of using Pecorina as bait to tame the mythical beast. A delivery slip reveals the Pegasus was gifted to improve international relations, though they suspect the senders were just dumping it. Conversing peacefully, they reflect on their impending return to the land of miracles with such a magnificent souvenir in tow. They brace themselves for an avalanche of tea party invitations and royal duties once they return to the capital. Alexis notes her heavy workload, reminding her that she must also balance her intense magic studies. Staring solemnly into the distance, Alexis quietly asks if all these burdens make her want to run away. Meeting his gaze with unshakable resolve, Adelina firmly declares that she will never run. Alexis questions if she is truly happy, vowing to chase her to the very ends of the earth no matter what. Touched by his fierce devotion, Adelina looks at him with pure affection and softly murmurs his name. With a heart overflowing with joy, she sincerely thanks the prince for choosing her out of everyone else. Alexis responds with a warm, affirming smile that speaks volumes of his own love. They reflect on their journey, noting that walking forward together turns passing time into a beautiful story. Stepping confidently into the future, they know they must keep weaving their shared destiny. Hand in hand, the couple vows to continue writing their story today and for all the days to come. Adelina excitedly mentions planting rare herb seeds before their trip, prompting Alexis to fondly note that she never changes.